Ragna, the new frontier noble, struggles through endless paperwork, wondering why administration dominates a world of swords and sorcery alike. Sebas explains most estate workers died in battle, leaving Ragna responsible for rebuilding daily operations despite his inexperience as lord. The harsh frontier faces constant monster attacks and border conflicts, earning a reputation as the dumping ground among neighboring nobles. Ragna's father and older brothers excelled only in combat, making his administrative talent an unexpected strength within the family estate. Raised since childhood against monsters and enemy soldiers, Ragna survives after losing his family in war, determined to protect everyone. As the only surviving son, Ragna unexpectedly inherits the frontier territory and accepts the burden of leading his family's struggling domain alone. Although he dreamed of becoming a carefree adventurer, Ragna is reminded that his responsibility as the young lord comes first. The frontier possesses abundant natural resources and valuable monster materials, attracting merchants and creating opportunities for future prosperity despite constant danger. Unfortunately, farming invites invading armies, while mountain development draws powerful monsters, leaving the territory with limited self-sufficiency and difficult choices. Realizing his position, Ragna heads to the royal capital's academy, hoping to gain support and secure his territory's future. Ragna prepares to attend the royal academy, hoping to earn support from noble heirs, though he doubts his ability to handle political relationships. While considering ways to avoid enrollment, Ragna is interrupted when Sebas arrives with an urgent matter requiring his immediate attention. Sebas informs Ragna that a noble family has unexpectedly sent him a marriage proposal, leaving the young lord completely surprised. Although marriage proposals are common for territorial lords, Ragna learns previous fiancés rejected his late brothers because they disliked the frontier. Hearing the proposal's background, Ragna questions the family's motives while returning to his mountain of paperwork with growing suspicion. Ragna accepts that academy life will divide his time between studying in the royal capital and managing the frontier during long vacations. Overwhelmed by endless responsibilities, Ragna asks Sebas to reject the marriage proposal, believing he has no time for a wife. Sebas reveals the proposal comes from the powerful Duchy of Oldwood, the family's greatest supplier of food and weapons, shocking Ragna. Remembering Oldwood's noble rank, Ragna suddenly recalls important knowledge about this world's original story and grows increasingly concerned. Forgotten memories from his past life resurface, making Ragna realize the marriage proposal could completely change his future and destiny. Ragna realizes he is a reincarnated person whose forgotten memories reveal this world as the setting of an otome game he once played. Remembering the game's story, he recalls a commoner heroine entering the Royal Academy and becoming involved with several noble love interests. He also remembers the kingdom eventually descending into chaos, turning the royal capital into a battlefield before the story reaches its conclusion. Ragna identifies Alicia, the gifted daughter of the Oldwood family, as the game's notorious villainess and the prince's fiancée. Although Alicia possesses remarkable talent and noble status, the game portrays her as cruel, causing Ragna to worry about the future. Alicia constantly bullies the heroine despite her outstanding talent. Yet the heroine steadily grows closer to the prince while enduring every hardship. Eventually, Alicia challenges the heroine over the prince, suffers a crushing defeat, and immediately loses her engagement to the royal heir. After the scandal, Alicia is sent away to marry a frontier noble family, where she is expected to spend the rest of her life. Ragna suddenly realizes the frontier family mentioned in the game's ending is actually his own household, leaving him completely stunned. Remembering Alicia's terrible reputation, Ragna fears marrying her would bring endless trouble to his peaceful life. Ragna imagines a miserable future where Alicia constantly mistreats him, making the arranged marriage seem like an unavoidable disaster in his eyes. Sebas informs him Alicia will arrive soon and later attend the Royal Academy together with him, leaving Ragna feeling completely overwhelmed. Wondering why such a distinguished noblewoman is being sent away, Ragna learns the royal family simply wants to remove her after her disgrace. Sebas reminds Ragna that everyone remaining in the brave territory works tirelessly despite heavy wartime losses, keeping the frontier alive through determination, accepting his responsibility. Ragna resolves to strengthen himself and prepare for Alicia's arrival and the challenges ahead. Alicia arrives at the brave territory where Ragna and Sebas quietly welcome the former prince's fiancée to her new home. Stepping from her carriage, Alicia carries herself with calm dignity, though the burn scar across her face immediately catches Ragna's attention. Startled by her appearance, Ragna accidentally reacts, causing Alicia to believe he sees her the same way everyone else always has. Instead of judging her, Ragna gently asks about the scar, explaining that such injuries are common among people living on the dangerous frontier. Alicia is left speechless by his unexpected response. Realizing Ragna views her scar as something ordinary rather than shameful. Ragna realizes Alicia's facial burn likely came from her duel, explaining why he treats the injury as an ordinary wound, rather than something shameful. Alicia remembers how everyone mocked her scar and believed her ruined appearance made her fit only for a life of disgrace. Ragna notices Alicia arrives with only a small carriage, a single suitcase, and no personal attendants, surprising him for a duke's daughter. Observing her lonely arrival, Ragna quickly understands she was abandoned by her family and sent away without proper care or respect, seeing Alicia's hopeless expression. Ragna compares her to a defeated soldier who has completely lost the will to resist her fate. Ragna notices Alicia behaves far more quietly than expected, abandoning his assumption that the infamous villainess would act arrogantly from the beginning. As he offers to show her room, Alicia unexpectedly steps closer and brushes the dust from his shoulder with gentle, careful movements. Ragna realizes Alicia was only concerned about his appearance, while she calmly apologizes after noticing his worn clothing instead. Her thoughtful actions leave Ragna confused, making him question whether the cruel villainess from the game truly matches the woman before him. Suddenly, Ragna notices a sinister demon bug attached to his clothing, a cursed creature born from lingering hatred that threatens its victim's happiness. Ragna realizes Alicia endured countless demon bugs born from others' hatred, yet she remains calm despite suffering that would drive most people insane. Thinking carefully, Ragna questions whether Alicia truly started the duel herself, suspecting the original game's story may have distorted the truth. He concludes the otome game's world twisted events for convenience, while both he and Alicia became victims of a predetermined fate. Remembering the original ending, Ragna recalls Alicia eventually becoming a monster whose revenge destroys the entire Brave territory, including himself. Refusing to accept that future, Ragna decides to help Alicia change her life and prevent the tragedy awaiting them both. Ragna decides that, since both of them face the same doomed future, he will stay optimistic and eliminate whatever threatens Alicia's happiness. Hearing his determination, Alicia quietly reveals she also wants to fight against the cruel fate imposed upon her by the world. Ragna warmly reassures Alicia that he will do everything possible to help her overcome the hardships awaiting their future together. His carefree smile surprises Alicia, stirring unfamiliar feelings as she realizes nobody has treated her with such kindness for a long time. While Ragna walks ahead confidently, Alicia watches silently, wondering why this strange young lord has begun changing her heart. Alicia had remained soft since arriving at the Brave household, keeping to her chamber and avoiding any dispute. Meanwhile, odd disturbances began appearing in the hall's small dark shapes, darted quietly through the air. Ragna, irritated, spent his time exterminating demonic insects that had invaded the manor, using sorcery to fend them off. He appealed to Sebas for aid, swamped by their increasing numbers. Staring out the window, he thought regarding tracking their origin while ending the threat himself. Ragna reflected on his raising, where combat abilities took priority over social dignity. Alicia's aura puzzled him deeply. Soft reassurance, though Ragna questioned what it meant to live like an ordinary youth. Determined to try something different, he approached Alicia's chamber alongside a plan in mind. He proposed they eat breakfast together, inspired by the Academy's drink party tradition. Alongside cheerful energy, he called for her to join their breakfast food. Ragna's pounding startled Alicia, who rushed to the door, flustered yet unharmed. They sat down together for breakfast, the air somewhat anxious yet composure. He assured her that any damage could be fixed, urging her to focus on the food instead. Alicia hesitantly sipped her brew, plainly unsure of the unknown flavor. Unable to hide her response, she confessed it was her first time tasting brew and preferred drink. Ragna apologized for not offering drink while added sugar to ease its bitterness of the brew. Alicia took another sip, surprised by the sweetness, while said she could drink it that way. They continued their food in quiet, each eating at their own pace. Curious, Alicia asked regarding his provisions, only to learn it was cooked monster meat. Described it was ordinary for his household, though the taste wasn't particularly pleasant. Alicia questioned why Ragna took on so many tasks himself, curious regarding his reasons. He described that their household was short-handed, many had fallen during battles, leaving him to manage solo. Her response was soft yet thoughtful, gradually grasping the weight he carried. He shared a central belief of the Brave household: loss without death held no shame. What truly mattered was enduring hardship while always rising again following every rest. Ragna softly reached toward Alicia's confront, brushing away her hair without delay. He spoke alongside sincerity, expressing admiration while pride in her resilience. Despite her mark smiling, he revealed his own scar, a symbol of survival he carried openly. Explaining his habit out of tending soldiers, he invited her to step outdoors together. Though the territory was rough, he offered a walk across its soft beauty. Alicia stood in quiet, swamped by how small human struggles felt against the vastness of essence. She at last agreed to join the walk, asking Ragna to lead her through the territory. They ventured inside the open wilderness, alongside mountains rising in the afar. Soon, fatigue set in while Alicia regretted underestimating the journey. Surprised by the trail's difficulty, she realized no one mentioned the road led this deep. They arrived at the Udana mountain range, a vast resource-rich area bordering the Brave territory. Alicia had pictured visiting a quaint town alongside local specialties, not a raw wilderness. Their destination wasn't a tourist spot yet, a rugged settlement where explorers gathered to hunt beasts. Ragnar recalled hearing somebody once bet on his father's existence during conflict. Noticing the heaviness of the topic, he swiftly apologized, noting it wasn't a tale suitable for a lady, while Alicia quietly processed his words. Alicia accepted the severe truth of the area, comparing it to her earlier brew experience, suggested a short rest, silently admiring how she tried to adapt to unfamiliar surroundings. She tasted the spring water while smiled, surprised by its refreshing quality. Described the water's purity came out of the mountain's high altitude while low evaporation. He remarked that such clarity was rare, even in the royal city, calling her name softly. Ragna described that while the territory was unforgiving, understanding it could make existence easier. He spoke of the Brave family's teaching real survival required knowing both friend while foe without belittling either. In this area, residents shaped their paths through personal resolve, fighting to guard what they understood. Alicia noticed that the residents appeared far different out of the dark tales she had once heard. Though laughter was rare in the Brave territory, Ragna reassured her that finding joy was still possible. Ragna urged them onward, claiming their goal lay just ahead, while Alicia struggled to keep pace. She questioned his contradictions regarding laughter, prompting a sly grin out of him in response. Their hands met briefly, and she confessed silently that he was unlike anyone she had known. As they reached the summit, Alicia stood in shocked quiet, gaze wide. Before her stretched a stunning landscape flooded alongside golden morning light while constant depth. Alicia stood speechless at the summit, breath taken by the sight. Ragna watched her response alongside soft pride. He confessed it was his preferred place, simple, maybe, yet deeply meaningful to him. As they settled under the trees, he offered her a small snack, sensing she must be tired. She addressed him formally, yet he softly told her not to use honorifics. Though flustered, she smiled. Noticing such customs were trivial here, Alicia hesitated, calling Ragna by name for the first time, her tone unsure yet sincere. She voiced a grave question, what one should do when choices lead to regret even following thoughtful decisions. Ragna reflected silently. Choosing one road meant abandoning another, that loss was unavoidable. Recollections of lost comrades returned to him. Some things, he knew, could never be reversed. Alongside a somber look, he asked what if nothing remained at all. Alicia confessed that her existence had always been devoted to one goal, while without it, she feared having nothing left. She declared her previous self. The Duchess, dead, that loss drove her to this isolated territory in search of something new. As demonic insects interrupted them, Ragna questioned if burying emotions was even possible. Later, Sabus advised Ragna to stop overthinking while confront his feelings as he was. Clenching his fist alongside silent determination, Ragna called out to Alicia, at last ready to respond. Alongside the sunset behind him, Ragna declared his vow to forever guard Alicia, out of now on. Alicia froze in surprise, the words catching her completely off guard. He reaffirmed his promise, calling her Alicia of the Brave household, not the duchy, while pledging to stay by her side despite her teasing. She saw through his effort while confessed his readiness was oddly endearing. Blushing, she smiled kindly, calling his words simple yet comforting, exactly what she needed to hear. Alicia asked if Ragna would still guard her, even if returning to the school meant facing hostility. He promised without delay, confidently accepting the challenge while she smiled gently at his confidence. Abruptly, a huge black worm appeared, declaring it had witnessed Ragna's vow. Ragna lightly introduced Onyx as his friend, causing Alicia to faint in surprise. Their eventful first trip concluded dramatic, emotional, while unforgettable for them both. Following their first outing, Ragna, while the lady had obviously grown more comfortable around each other. The next morning she stood shocked by the messy chamber and questioned his choice to make a vow before a worm. He clarified that Onyx, a mighty worm, dwelled far within the mountain range while meant no harm. With its blessing, the territory was freed from demonic insects, bringing comfort to the manor. Once Ragna had encountered Onyx in a violent duel, earning the creature's recognition. Alicia reflected on her earlier panic, feeling embarrassed, yet Ragna reassured her it was all right. The servants, accustomed to surprises, described that she would adapt soon enough, just as they had. While reviewing documents, Alicia silently observed the others. Despite Ragna's hesitation, she confidently offered her aid, determined to ease the workload. Together, they uncovered irregularities in finances, working together across stacks of ledgers while reports. Alicia devoted herself to sorting the overwhelming documents, her focus unwavering until the task was nearly complete. Praised by others for her capability, she remained controlled. Though Ragna mused on the difference in their worldviews, he silently noticed her soft grin now that the influence of the demonic insects had faded. Outdoors, Alicia watched the everyday tasks, observing the effort each servant put in. Rather than rest, she volunteered to aid clean the mansion, surprising everybody with her humility while resolve. Alicia declared her intent to experience existence as a human, seeking out things she had never done prior to. While others admired her enthusiasm, the butler silently placed responsibility on the youthful master's shoulders. Ragna discovered that a new weapon shop had opened the same day Alicia arrived, raising suspicion. The shop operated alongside Royal City-style marketing ordinary goods as if they were treasures. Noticing the owners might be monitoring Alicia, the butler pressed Ragna to decide how to respond. Under the shade of night, Ragna made a soft decision to act he would deal alongside the threat himself. He cautiously approached the enemy's location, alert to every movement in the silent village streets. Warned by his butler, he learned the area housed very skilled individuals out of the city. A local confessed to attempting theft out of annoyance alongside their arrogant behavior. Yet the thief's recklessness cost him dearly, his arm severed prior to he even saw the blade transfer. Ragna confirmed his suspicions those responsible could sever an arm without even pulling a blade. The attackers weren't ordinary. They were sorcerers, wielders of sorcery essence taught for conflict. He realized their objective was obvious: Alicia. She was the true target. Without delay, Ragna broke in, sending shockwaves across the enemy's hideout. Facing the group personally, he bravely reminded them they started this now. He was there to end it. Ragna confronted the suspicious visitors at the gate, quietly demanding an explanation for their sneaking around the manor. The men stood defiant, pulling their arms in front of Ragna, showing no fear despite his aristocrat position. Confident in numbers, they planned to eliminate him prior to anyone could find out. Grinning at their advantage, surrounded, Ragna remained controlled, watching their movements without a trace of panic. Alongside flawless precision, Ragna countered, ending their pride in one blow. With a sharp blow, Ragna launched his attacker across the chamber, ending the battle in a single transfer. The aftermath was soft. Defeated enemies lay groaning on the floor, unable to stand. From the shadows, a hooded person appeared, clapping gradually while praising Ragna's strength while youth. Showing himself as a magician, the hooded man stepped forward with a controlled look. Instead of threats, he quietly asked regarding Alicia's well-being, catching Ragna's full focus. A warped grin spread across the magician's confront as he dismissed Ragna's question with eerie laughter. He boasted confidently, describing how his accursed gift had ensnared Alicia, the so-called prodigy. While recollections surfaced, Ragna recognized the hooded person responsible while gripped his blade with silent determination. Leaping forward, Ragna struck alongside force, catching the foe off guard prior to he could react. Furious, Ragna confronted him, showing knowledge of the demonic insects tormenting Alicia every day. Servants praised Alicia's warmth while dedication, describing her as cheerful and adored throughout the manor. Just as the magician prepared a new blow, Ragna leapt inside action, launching a bold counterattack. Shocked by the report of Alicia's happiness, the magician trembled, unable to accept the truth. Recollections of his dark influence clashed with truth, and Ragna tackled the summoned creature personally. Despite his enemy's resistance, Ragna held steady, determined to shatter the curse's grip completely. Ragna struck violently, avenging the injured adventurer whose arm had been lost in combat. Without pause, he followed with another blow, punishing the constant swarm of pests dispatched by the foe, cornering the magician. Ragna offered a chance at mercy in exchange for the truth behind the attacks. Panicked, the man blurted out the culprit, the Duke's household, prior to trying to trigger a spell. Without delay, Ragna delivered criticism, ending the torment Alicia had suffered in quiet. Even as the defeated magician muttered curses, Ragna stood tall, unaffected while silent. He smiled faintly, entrusting Sebas alongside cleanup, stating that curses held no power over him anymore. Later, under the evening sky, Ragna voiced a worry how to keep Alicia near during their school times. Sebas misunderstood completely, leaping to awkward conclusions regarding scandalous arrangements. Embarrassed, Ragna clarified his intent. He only wished to guard Alicia prior to danger ever reached her. Under the night sky, Ragna pondered the emptiness in his heart, unsure when it began. As he walked through the soft village, he questioned whether he could truly fit at the school. Elsewhere, a letter was creature prepared with thoughtful care while crucial details. Alicia, determined to support him, made sure to gather everything he might need for the coming new existence. Though unspoken, their mutual worry silently deepened as the night silently embraced their hearts. Alicia quietly tended the garden, her hands busy alongside radishes while others watched out of afar. No longer focused on academics, she took on everyday tasks. Across them, she became capable in every aspect of household existence. Her departure saddened the servant, who couldn't hide her emotions. The servant stuck to Alicia, pleading for her to stay. Despite protests, only Ragna would attend the school. Alicia remained at the mansion, her aura accepted without objection. Alicia kindly declined to send vegetables to the school, asking they be shared at residence instead. A odd gift, a collar once worn by Ragna, was handed to Alicia for disciplinary use, leaving her confused. The wagon departed amid lively chatter, alongside servants shouting instructions while teasing warnings toward Ragna. As they rode together, Alicia admired how deeply others worried for Ragna, expressing soft envy. Reflecting on the moment, Ragna realized it was his first time ever leaving residence. Laughter packed the chamber as Ragna spent time with the servants, sharing smiles and stories before his departure. Alongside a soft farewell, he left the manor, passing through the familiar fields that stretched toward the horizon. The driver pointed out the royal city in the afar as Alicia looked on in quiet. Feeling reluctant, Ragna asked Alicia for a small favor, his look turning grave. He requested her assist alongside something basic, learning how to buy a train ticket. Alicia giggled at Ragna's plea for train guidance, amused by his inexperience yet happy to aid, joking regarding the crowded city. She teased the idea of using a collar to keep track of him. As they approached their destination, Ragna looked up in wonder, taking in the unfamiliar sight. The royal city, Ether, appeared grand, protected by a magical shield while residents to over 1 million. Walking across crowded streets, Ragna noted how compact it felt compared to his calm, brave territory. As they explored the city, Ragna while Alicia browsed shops and eyed skewers sizzling at a street stall. While walking alongside baggage and palm, Ragna asked about their dorms, relieved to hear they'd be separate. The journey continued by train, the scenery shifting rapidly. Previous the windows. Entrance brought disappointment. An old, worn-down building stood as their shared dormitory, far different out of assumptions. A letter out of Sebes revealed its isolated location, far removed from the school grounds. Alicia read Sebes's letter, noticing their poor existing conditions were part of a wider political scheme to deter opposition. Despite the dusty state of the dorm, Ragna saw potential. However, he was blindsided by a shocking message lightly showing personal supplies placed in his chamber. The letter continued, explaining the real goal was simply to ensure they lived under the same roof. To stay close to Alicia, Ragna would now need to pass the entrance exam for the upper class. Ragna reflected on the challenge ahead. Aethernam School was prestigious, packed with the nation's aristocrat children, its classes ranked by position. Entry to the upper class meant eligibility for royal connections, while others landed in the lesser class. Even common folk could rise if their talents were deemed exceptional, marked as descendants of sages. Despite the unclear structure, Ragna tried to imagine existence at the school. He would stand tall beside Alicia. No issue their origin, Ragna made a steady promise if it came down to skill, he would prove they could triumph. Upon entrance at the school, a stern tone scolded him for creature late. Facing the upper-class teacher, Ragna described his delay with a nervous grin, yet received only disdain. Other students ridiculed his pace, plainly unimpressed by his background, ignoring the criticism. The instructor initiated a sorcery test, demanding Ragna's complete power. Ragna asked regarding sorcery rules, only to be rushed by the impatient examiner to begin the test. As he prepared, the instructor sighed, plainly annoyed at having to oversee the evaluation. Focused, Ragna extended his palm, ready to demonstrate what he was capable of. Abrupt blast erupted, shaking the area while sending debris flying in all directions. The examiner stared in surprise as a huge hole pierced straight through the school wall. Shocked by the ruin, the teacher questioned Ragna's power while Ragna quietly asked if he had passed. Despite the display, the instructor declared his failure, claiming sorcery solo wasn't enough. A wooden sword was tossed his way. He had reached the next stage, swordsmanship. Victory now depended on defeating the examiner personally without assistance. Alongside sorcery band, Ragna accepted the challenge, ready to prove himself through strength solo. With a swift blow, Ragna launched the instructor backward, ending the fit immediately. Examining the shattered weapon, he noticed iron concealed inside the teacher's sword, unlike his own. He confronted the examiner, noticing the test had been rigged against him. The school principal, Vorzie Grand Cascade, appeared, raising wonders regarding the manipulation. Ragna comes to the school on the day of the transfer exam, where he is greeted by the strict director, Vorzie Grand Cascade. As Ragna walks through the hall, he feels the sharp stare of the sage, a strong aristocrat from a ducal home whose focus could spell trouble. The sage observes Ragna closely, quietly judging his aura while potential. Surprisingly, the sage declares Ragna has passed the exam. Despite wonders about standing, the sage dismisses position differences, affirming Ragna's worth. The school director offers Ragna the chance to join the elite upper class, testing his intent. While reluctant, Ragna reflects on somebody crucial to him. The reason behind his resolve, driven by duty, he declares his purpose to guard her. The director acknowledges his answer, murmurs of his background, while his fiancé's actions stir unrest among the servants. Outraged by prejudice, the director silences dissent alongside a thunderous reprimand. The director chastises a teacher, urging him to lead students properly rather than stir unrest. Ragna receives special approval to share a dormitory provided boundaries are maintained respectfully. Returning residents, he silently reflects on how that same teacher once supported the protagonist in the initial tale. A girl rushes to him alongside Worry, visibly relieved he is unharmed. Her new uniform catches his eye. Over drink, Ragna recounts the exam ordeal, quietly affirming his success despite the pressure. Curious, the girl at last asks Ragna to explain his mysterious sorcery disease. He admits it's hard to describe, though he can use all basic elements. Her stomach growls mid-believed, embarrassed by the untimely noise. She quietly clutches the melon she's holding. Flustered, she runs off, declaring they need to prepare a proper food for tomorrow. While walking together, she tells him no violence is allowed at the school. Alicia gently admits she no longer fears criticism, as long as Ragna pieces by her side. Ragna responds alongside surprising honesty, acknowledging Alicia's strength as greater than his own. He admires her silent endurance. The ability to endure emotional pain, something even fighters struggle alongside. Confident in herself, she walks forward without shame, standing tall in a world that once scorned her. As they enter the school together, murmurs stir around them, yet Alicia walks on unshaken. A student alongside Distorted Thoughts sees Alicia's lowered position as an opportunity for his own gain. Prior to he acts, he collapses. Ragna had silently unleashed killing intent. Alicia swiftly tells him to stop later in class. Ragna shrugs off the event, questioning if everybody out of the mainland is just that weak. He remembers the story's protagonist, a radiant girl who was destined to become a saint. Snapping back to truth, Ragna confidently answers a class question. His mind now sharper than ever in class. A new girl explains a rare kind of sorcery, one without any elemental attribute, requiring a deep mastery of emptiness. She waits confidently, catching focus with her controlled demeanor and glasses. Ragna recognizes her immediately. She's the story's initial main girl. A woman entered the chamber while confirmed the student's answer, noting it was a deceptive question. Mariana Ocean confidently solved the problem, impressing the teacher while surprising her classmates. She struggled with cracked glasses and cruel murmurs from others who doubted her part as the story's main girl. Despite Creature offered a new seat, Mariana smiled while chose to manage on her own. Irritated, the teacher reassigned her to the front seat for the next change. Ragna watched quietly as Alicia frantically apologized in the classroom, her actions pulling focus. During a soft holiday, somebody questioned Alicia's odd behavior and the source of her struggles. He wanted to ask about her previous, yet hesitated, while Alicia dismissed such curiosity with a casual notice. Abruptly, an impact out of above interrupted the moment, catching both of them off guard. Debris fell violently while Alicia screamed, shielding herself as the ceiling collapsed around her. Confused, asked regarding the glowing shield. Ragna described it was a concealed shield. He elaborated that the sorcery he used was a holy shield, similar to the one protecting the royal city. Alicia was surprised that he could cast sorcery without chanting, while Ragna noted its versatility. He gave an example of how barriers are typically perceived as solid walls in combat. Alongside a smooth gesture, Ragna demonstrated chantless casting using a floating kettle to pour drink. Alongside ease, Ragna demonstrated how barriers could take any form, even guiding brew mid-air. Alicia watched in awe as the floating cup captured everyone's focus alongside its charm. Curious, She speculated that advanced barriers might allow selective passage of objects or residents. Further, noting limitations like creature unable to separate things already mixed, such as brew. As their conversation softened, Alicia shyly invited Ragna out while mentioning they were out of beans. Alicia suggested visiting a cafe she claimed served particularly fine brew. As they walked across the streets, Ragna questioned where she got her information. She recalled facing a fellow brew lover during lunch at the library who recommended the place. Ultimately, they arrived at the shop named Ocean, a comfortable specialty cafe. Hearing the bell ring, Ragna stared in surprise. Sensing something oddly familiar inside the cafe, a surprised girl greeted Alicia, seeing her immediately. Outdoors, Ragna snapped out of a daze as Alicia called for him, while Mariana looked on in confusion. Introductions followed swiftly. Mariana realized Ragna was the brew enthusiast her friend had mentioned. Though they shared a class, the two had never spoken until now. Shocked by Alicia's aristocrat fiancé, Mariana grew flustered while overly apologetic. Mariana panicked, dropping to the floor in apology, fearing penalty for offending nobility. Despite her position as the story's main girl, Ragna felt disheartened by the overreaction. Regaining her composure, Mariana confessed she spoke first while apologized for losing control, expressing hope for friendship. She had assumed Alicia was a fellow commoner following seeing her drink brew solo at the library. Puzzled, realized there was a second sage's disciple, something that deviated out of the initial game. Alicia quietly confirmed that she had acted solo, unaware of the stir Mariana's actions had caused. Mariana appeared confused, noticing she hadn't heard regarding the events surrounding the Academy's decisions. In a flustered explanation, she confessed to boarding the wrong coach, ending up far from the city. Ragna silently questioned the moment. Was it truly a mistake, or something intentional behind the detour? Lightening the mood, Alicia pointed out Mariana's magical talent, teasing her regarding her absent-mindedness. Confidently, she claimed to be gifted in sorcery, though her parents often called her useless in other areas. Alongside a somber look, she revealed their passing both had died out of illness the previous year. Though surprised, no anger lingered. Gratitude packed her words as she credited them for her current road. Noticing her lapse, she smiled and offered brew, having lost to serve her guests anything. A warm sip later, delight lit Alicia's confront as she praised the drink's rich taste. Compliments packed the chamber as the brew impressed both guests with its distinct flavor. Despite using identical beans, Ragna puzzled over why his brew felt harsher, pulling a teasing comment out of the butler. Jokingly, he called Mariana his mentor, prompting laughter while a flustered response. Gently, she confessed her surprise aristocrats were supposed to be intimidating, yet these two felt different. When asked regarding her discomfort around nobility, a remote memory stirred, though it remained faint while unclear. As a child, she was warned that aristocrats were dangerous. Defiance meant death. Not long following, a noble's coach struck her without notice while she was crossing the road. Lying on the ground, she watched the coach roll away, its passengers indifferent to her pain. With weakened eyesight from the accident, her household turned to brew, believing it might aid. Over time, their shared cups became an everyday ritual, transforming them inside devoted brew lovers. When asked regarding her strongest sorcery, she confidently pointed out her talent in spellcasting. Among her many abilities, healing sorcery stood out, a power rare enough to surprise everybody. In that world, few could wield such strength, yet in the game's lore, Saint Mariana could heal anything. Driven by regret out of failing to rescue her sick parents, she devoted herself to learning recovery sorcery. Just as the mood quieted, Ragna confessed he had accidentally locked the door following entering. Turmoil erupted when a loud man demanded the door be opened, barking like a dog in annoyance rather than creature upset. She quietly described she had closed shop lately to focus on her studies. On their way out, Alicia asked if she would stay in the dormitory, noting her position might exempt her. The soft warmth of her home made it feel like residence. Later, a stern official reminded her that financial support depended on maintaining top academic performance. Alongside a hopeful grin, she offered her support, encouraging Alicia to rely on her if needed. Gratitude shone in Alicia's gaze. Just hearing those words was more than enough. An unexpected plea to give her Alicia startled everybody, swiftly shut down by a flat refusal. As evening settled in, Alicia walked beside Ragna, reflecting on how kind the girl truly was. Something about her stare stirred a memory. Those gaze reminded Alicia of somebody she once met. Under the night sky, she spoke about residents with inner strength while he silently agreed. Curious, she asked if he had met somebody like that. He responded without delay. He described gaze that defied destiny, brave while captivating. Her confront flushed as they exchanged teasing remarks, sharing a light-hearted moment together. A aristocrat girl once scorned the soft commoner, casting severe criticism under winter's sky. The two stood divided, fated rivals in a cold, remote field, their roles fixed by society's labels. Time passed. Now, they sat together, sharing lunch while calm moments. Their friendship bloomed, pulling smiles while admiration out of those around them. A nearby boy watched, confused how enemies became partners so naturally. While Mariana wondered regarding Ragna's absence, she noted how devoted he was to his studies. Meanwhile, Ragna reflected on how his aura might bring criticism given his background in exile. Elsewhere, Alicia and Mariana formed in surprising friendship. Despite their initial written rivalry in the initial stage, Alicia had lost everything. Yet here, Mariana was enjoying peace. This time, Alicia realized her true opponent lay beyond Mariana, in a different dispute altogether. Alicia, swamped while defeated, looked up in confusion, unable to identify her opponent. Nearby, a silent observer reacted alongside surprise, fighting to process what had unfolded. Murmurs spread that the prince himself may have initiated the duel. Stirring further suspicion, determined to uncover the truth, one student slipped away silently across the rooftops. Out of above, he spotted the prince while the crowd, marking the starting of his search. Prince Edward approached alongside Charm, yet the girl courteously declined, bound by another promise. In the game's initial road, the prince's route was seen as the standard choice. He had been the first hurdle and easy fit meant to teach players the basics. Yet assumptions clashed alongside truth as the plot began shifting from the intended script. Unexpectedly, a new girl appeared prior to the prince, startling the observer who watched out of afar. Patricia softly corrected the prince, reminding him that titles held no weight in this calm place. Recollections surfaced as Edward recalled their first facing in the castle town. She confessed she hadn't known his self back then, but thought about their reunion at the school fete. Guided by her sincerity, Edward asked her to call him not by his standing, yet by name. Blushing, Patricia gently spoke his name aloud, Edward marking a tender shift in their connection. Both vulnerable while sincere, watching out of above, he cringed at the growing awkwardness of the romantic scene below. The girl's name, Patricia, didn't exist in the initial game. Her aura disturbed everything he remembered. He questioned herself, sensing something rare as Edward grew increasingly drawn to her. Abruptly, multiple male students appeared, each captivated by Patricia, determined not to be left behind. Realization struck every one of them was a romanceable target. Patricia had somehow entered the game's core. Patricia sat at the center of focus, surrounded by 6 elite boys, unintentionally forming a reverse harem. Even Edward confessed she might be swamped, while the others competed for her time without restraint. Patricia, composure and prepared, managed the turmoil effortlessly, offering extra provisions with a soft grin. From afar, it was obvious she had activated every romantic flag and replaced the initial protagonist completely. Observers whispered in surprise. This kind of full-route success wasn't meant to happen on a first playthrough. He decided to stay out of the reverse harem case, convinced it could only lead to turmoil. Another student quietly observed certain somebody within the group required close focus. Josei Grand Ignite, the second son of aristocrat home, chose to dine with the others instead of solo. He lightly questioned Patricia regarding a magician's suspicious activity in brave territory. Troubled recollections surfaced. Josei knew that man brought danger. Josei was formed as a backup successor, raised in isolation as a concubine's child. His storyline was a grim one made to pull players inside a web of emotional rescue. Depending on choices, he could turn dangerously shaky or remain kind while faithful. Although they hadn't met, worry rose as the Ignite household plainly had their gaze on him. To guard Alicia's calm fate, he resolved to act before calamity could take root. A strong person stood tall, cloaked in sorcery, catching the students' wary stare from afar. The principal arrived unexpectedly, while their conversation shifted toward concealed motives and rooftop risks. Seeing the opportunity, the boy spoke personally. He had a question that couldn't wait. Unnatural blonde hair, a growing harem, while unknown origins all pointed to one conclusion. Patricia wasn't ordinary, she was a reincarnator. While now he demanded the truth. Ragnar requested information about Patricia, a student alongside an unclear previous. While rumored magical talent, Patricia quietly refused any wrongdoing, insisting she passed the entrance exam fairly without secret manipulation. Later, suspicions arose following the protagonist was separated during an event, hinting at a concealed scheme. Evidence suggested the Ignite household assisted in switching the coach. The elder chose surveillance over action, allowing Patricia to stay enrolled. Ragna sighed, wishing for a calm existence away out of complications. The elder questioned his restrained lifestyle, reminding him of his youth while liberty. Rather than complain, Ragna brushed it off, explaining his part as aristocrat from the remote border. Alongside a grin, he invoked the legacy of the brave household, proud yet humble. The elder reflected quietly, acknowledging the enduring strength carried in that aristocrat bloodline. He challenged Ragna's determination, questioning the strength of his resolve. Without delay, Ragna launched a fierce punch, slamming personally inside the elder's confront. Their conflict dispatched shockwaves through the corridor, breaking the surrounding walls. Meanwhile, remote students panicked as tremors shook the school floor beneath them. Following the confrontation, Ragna stood silently by the damaged pillar, leaving the scene alongside silent conviction. A clenched fist hovered inches from the elder's confront, packed alongside restrained fury. Words followed alongside piercing intent. Alicia's safety stood above all else. Approval came only alongside a challenge to prove strength across action, not words. Scoffing at the idea of destiny, he questioned the script he was imposed to follow, unknown to him. Destiny warped deeper, dragging strong souls inside a growing spiral of madness. Signs of change loomed as students bearing strong fates began to gather. Alongside Mariana, left unprotected while weakened, a new task was entrusted to keep her safe at all costs. Her fate wasn't meant to remain within this confined world. Something far beyond waited for her. Despite her brave front, anxiety crept in as the road ahead grew unsure. Stepping inside the labyrinth for the first time, she stood beside her protector, unaware of how much more Valze truly understood. Inside the practical practice labyrinth, students encountered live combat where sorcery theory became truth. Some leaned on others for comfort. Patricia, swamped by fear, found assurance in Edward's protective words. Out of afar, cynicism crept in. For many, this labyrinth merely served as a stage to grow closer alongside romantic targets. Beyond the social fluff, an crucial artifact lay concealed, and deception surrounded it. Confident while controlled, she looked every bit the seasoned adventurer, igniting awe and curiosity as the party prepared to transfer. Ekaterina stood alongside confidence, mocking those without aristocrat blood, while calling out a commoner's persistence. Recognition hit her. Distinct drills were hard to forget, once always seen beside Alicia. Contempt spilled freely as slurs against peasants and slum-formed students packed the air. Gaze narrowed at the claim that only aristocrats deserved to fit. Her aura challenged their pride. Dark intentions surfaced alongside a grin, offering to cleanse the school of those deemed unworthy. Unexpected tone broke the tension as the group came to a halt near the rocky wall. Descends quickened when they noticed the confrontation ahead. Alicia leading the approach alongside sharp focus. Cruel words flew as Ekaterina ridiculed Alicia, blaming her for the aura of common folk and failures. No denial came. Alicia accepted the contempt, owning her faults without flinching. Even so, she stood steady, shielding Mariana out of blame alongside unwavering resolve. Ekaterina's group issued a bold challenge, offering fights to settle any grievances. Confidence radiated as Alicia teased Mariana. Notice her that the odds were not in her favor. Insults escalated swiftly, mocking previous accomplishments while reducing them to petty ridicule. Rather than retaliate, Alicia responded alongside ease, embracing her love for brew with a grin. Annoyed while outmatched, the opposing group stormed off, swamped by the scent of roasted pride. Realization settled in quietly. Her aura confirmed what he suspected all along. Alicia apologized for getting involved alongside trouble, yet strength still radiated out of her composure demeanor. Admiration slipped out. He confessed his growing feelings, drawn to her courage while composure. Light banter followed, shielding the pain of earlier insults alongside humor while shared loyalty. But deeper within the labyrinth, an unsettling quiet and unknown footsteps suggested a new danger. Crystals glittered along jagged walls as the group stepped inside the cavern's shadowy depths. Despite her cheerful tone, Mariana recalled how traps while beasts relentlessly greeted them. Blame for creature on the front line shifted lightly, humor softening the pressure of danger. An unexpected attack imposed Ragna into motion, shielding his partners without delay. Quietly, he described the shield spell, confident even as arms hovered inches from his skin. Sorcery surrounding Ragna's body sparked curiosity, but he quietly described its limits and risks. The shield was formed from childhood fear surrounded by danger. He willed protection inside existence. Ages of practice turned instinct inside skill. Now he could deploy it without conscious effort. When asked regarding the brave territory's harshness, Alicia dismissed the fear alongside a fond grin. Plans formed swiftly. Mountain practice during summer. A shared journey that deepened bonds while promises. Practice began alongside high spirits as the group entered the Brave-style boot camp to master chantless sorcery. Excitement packed the air. Mariana eagerly volunteered, though even she confessed the sorcery still puzzled her. Curiosity turned inward as they questioned the dungeon's odd rules like vanishing beasts leaving no trace. Digging deeper, clues suggested at old sage involvement, sparking even greater intrigue. Abruptly, Mariana activated a strong circle, unleashing surprising sorcery that shocked everybody around her. As turmoil erupted, Ragna dashed forward alongside Alicia while another girl close behind. All three were drawn inside a swirling vortex, their figures vanishing into the unknown depths of the portal. They landed hard in a dark destruction, surrounded by crumbling pillars while creeping vines. Confusion packed the air. The unfamiliar cave bore signs of old construction. While Alicia inspected the structure, Ragna realized a teleportation trap had been triggered, one fitting the protagonist's unlucky destiny. Alicia intervened as the smaller girl attempted to wield a pickaxe. Despite the notice, the girl offered brew with a grin, treating the moment as if it were a calm break. Everybody ultimately joined in, sipping from warm cups in the middle of the labyrinth. Ragna silently observed them, relieved that neither showed signs of panic in such an unpredictable case. As he sipped his drink, Ragna reflected on the truth: falling to the dungeon's depths often meant no rescue. Only quiet. Ragna stood facing the group, his composure look contrasting the unease on their faces as tension thickened. Alicia voiced her concerns, noting how isolated while dangerous their case had become. Questioning Ragna's composure, alongside reassuring confidence, Ragna promised there was still a way forward if they remained calm. Rather than retreat, they chose to venture deeper, heading straight inside the dungeon's most perilous area. Studying the corridor ahead, Ragna quietly analyzed the odd sorcery circle engraved on the stone road. Alicia's previous as an enemy in the game resurfaced, casting doubt on her true essence and intentions. Despite lingering wonders, the group pressed on. A pendant smothered deeper inside was essential for their plan. Regarded as the holy artifact, the item held the power to rescue the kingdom in the final stages. The artifact was key to awakening the saint, obtainable only by following specific character paths. To retrieve it, they needed to lose the guardian guarding the door while locate the nearby teleportation circle. Ragna shared what the record stated: defeating the guardian of the deepest level might allow their comeback. Alicia pointed out the looming threat, dreading the effort it would take to confront such a foe. Their road led them to an ornate door radiating an eerie aura. Something significant waited for inside. To their surprise, no guardian stood watch. A hint of hope stirred. Maybe it truly was the exit. That hope vanished immediately. Out of the shadows, the guardian revealed itself, its huge form radiating menace. Ragna's gaze opened in alarm as Mariana stood frozen, the monstrous guardian looming behind her, acting fast. He grabbed her while leapt, obvious of the incoming flame, shielding her out of the blast. Out of the fire emerged a towering beast, its body burning like a furnace, radiating unstoppable strength. The sheer intensity of its aura shocked them, its energy blinding, like standing prior to a miniature sun. Such overwhelming sorcery could rival legendary beings, maybe a worm, or even the mythical beast Fenrir. Ragna urged the others to step back. Prior to them stood a fiend, one Alicia would later entrust her soul to. Alicia abruptly froze, her look tightening as recollections surged. Her thoughts spiraled to a previous loss, voices condemning her for losing to somebody beneath her position. Trembling, she struggled to breathe, her gaze wide as panic took hold while previous trauma resurfaced. Then, a remote tone called her name. That familiar sound pierced across the haze, grounding her once more. Ragna grasped Alicia's confront, steadily bringing her back out of the grip of her trauma. His tone calm, he urged her to look at him, assuring her that everything would be fine. Her gaze softened, confusion gradually fading as his words anchored her in the present. Following confirming their spells, Ragna instructed the others to stay behind while ran toward danger solo. Alongside determination burning in his gaze, he vowed to end the threat with his own hands. Fury in his gaze, Ragna charged toward the guardian, blaming it for reigniting Alicia's pain. As he unleashed his sorcery, the creature's body began to shrink under the pressure of his assault. Energy burst outward. Ragna sprinted alongside the blast wave, aiming personally for the heart of the threat. Moment his blow, he cleaved through the enemy's guard with explosive force while precision. Out of the side, the others watched in awe. He'd severed the monster's head. Yet another aura approached behind. The headless guardian staggered, mumbling in confusion as molten blood poured out of its neck. Yet, despite its injuries, the monster let out a warped laugh while began to regenerate with eerie ease. Unshaken, Ragna dared it to blow, charging in without delay to provoke its next transfer. Alongside a fierce leap, he slammed another devastating blow personally inside its core. Standing steady, Ragna ridiculed the creature's weak defense, calling it unworthy even of the lowest-ranked brave. The Guardian roared in defiance as Ragna's blade plunged deep inside its skull. A fiery blast swallowed him moments later, consuming the space in searing white heat. Out of afar, Alicia, while Mariana cried out his name in panic, fearing the worst. The monster reveled in the flames, declaring its command to scar everything to ash. Emerging unharmed, Ragna stared coldly, mocking the heat he'd suffered worse out of a true fire worm. Ragna stepped toward the corrupted beast, demanding to know the self of the one sealed inside. He recalled the essence of demons, formless beings bound across packs by humans seeking their own gain. The golem's quiet didn't faze him. Instead, Ragna stared, unblinking, at its distorted grin. Without delay, he extended his palm, ready to read the magical signature across direct contact. A sharp pulse erupted as he struck the demon's core, unleashing a wave of radiant force. Ragna's instincts screamed as he realized the Guardian was initiating self-ruin. Alicia and Mariana braced within a shield, fighting to keep it as the explosion erupted violently. Amid the turmoil, Ragna shielded them alongside a final surge of sorcery, redirecting the shockwave outward. The ground trembled, cracks spreading as the chamber echoed alongside aftershocks out of the blast. Kneeling, bruised yet alive, Ragna accursed under his breath. Somebody had been orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Alicia rushed to Ragna's side, worried regarding his injuries. He brushed it off, insisting it was only a scratch, touched by his promise to guard them. Alicia felt a soft warmth come back to her chest. Ragna inspected a concealed spot near the wall, prompting Alicia's curiosity as she approached cautiously. He described he'd seen a teleportation circle during the combat and exit from the labyrinth. As the girls stepped ahead, Ragna revealed the recovered artifact behind his back. The group stood in strained quiet, still processing the aftermath of their encounter in the labyrinth. Ragna silently analyzed the lingering traces of sorcery, committing its aura to memory with precision. Alongside determination, he prepared to track the true source. This combat was only the starting. Jalasis stumbled out of the labyrinth, coughing while exhausted. He had collapsed again, his outfit torn while body trembling. Patricia entered, her stare cold. She questioned him about the holy relic while dismissed his efforts as useless. Without notice, she struck him, scolding him harshly for failing the mission. Despite his apologies, she continued hitting him. Angry that even a demon's possession hadn't helped, collapsed on the floor. Jalasis gasped for air. Patricia simply asked what happened, unmoved. Jalasis revealed the cause of his failure. Ragna braved surprising interference during the mission. Patricia, irritated, recalled the man from the border, somebody meant to fade silently from the narrative. Her scheme to brand Alicia as the villainous woman had been ruined, all sense of that unforeseen interruption. Even with manipulation while threats, her previous partners proved useless, leaving her plans in disarray. Quietly yet coldly, she dismissed worry while issued a direct, unsettling command to Jalasis. Patricia asked Jalasis where he had sustained his injuries as she observed him quietly. He silently pointed to the blazes across his neck, the lingering marks evidence of a deadly encounter. While treating him, Patricia recalled the opponent, another reincarnator like herself whose blow had decapitated a man immediately. Given his self-ruin, she concluded his end was inevitable if his case mirrored hers. Alongside surprising warmth, she praised Jalasis, acknowledging his effort while calling it a well-fought loss. Jalasis expressed gratitude as he embraced Patricia, comfort softening his guarded look. She held him close, remembering his rare essence formed with a fiend like herself, and accepted him as her beloved younger brother. Looking at him alongside sincerity, Patricia offered to stand as his big sister, just for this moment. Guided, he clutched her outfit while whispered her name, needing comfort. Admitting his fear, Jalasis confessed he couldn't lose the overwhelming foe. Patricia observed Jalasis in quiet, remembering how sensitive he had always been. Kneeling prior to her, Jalasis hesitated as she demanded to know what he truly desired. In a burst of emotion, he confessed his longing for Alicia, his tone trembling. Obsession overtook reason. He envisioned keeping Alicia by force, even if it meant destroying her. Patricia quietly stated the price to claim Alicia. He must first kill the one she loved. Told Jalasis he was special while urged him to keep moving forward. Her tone packed with conviction, she softly promised to always remain by his side, offering comfort in the part of his sister. In a soft, intense moment, she leaned in while kissed him, sealing her words alongside action. Reinvigorated, Jalasis vowed to win next time, his body surging alongside fresh magical power. Alongside a composure grin, Patricia revealed the truth: he had already achieved victory. Patricia teased Jolasis, reminding him he had just been kissed by a cute girl. He hesitantly asked if that counted as a win, while she affirmed it without delay. As they returned to the school, she remarked how students thrived on conflict like this. She then noticed Ragna fell brave again, her focus immediately sharpening. Determined, she stared out the window, noticed that any interference alongside her plans would be met without mercy. Patricia stared across the glass, vowing to reshape destiny alongside her own relentless will. After enduring a severe week of labyrinth survival, Ragna, while his group emerged from the cave exhausted yet accomplished. No time was wasted. The next phase of practice had already commenced, this time within the academy's luxurious courtyard. While taking in the scenery, Ragna couldn't hide his confusion at the aura of a full-size water area in a military facility. The scene unfolded strangely, alongside students abruptly donning swimsuits, confirming again that this world followed the absurd logic of an otome game. Patricia hesitated at the water's edge, prompting both male classmates to rush forward, keen to assist her personally. While others had the poolside atmosphere, Ragna remained remote, unmoved by the so-called reward event that followed their combat. Mariana, wearing her swimsuit, approached him cheerfully while asked why he wasn't participating, unaware of his awkward discomfort. Trying to lighten the mood, she suggested drink while commented on how perfect the day was for sorcery. Her energy infectious, despite distractions. She remained focused on the few residents she trusted, Alicia, while Ragna, displaying a soft loyalty that grounded her. As a commoner, Mariana stood out, not for her power, yet for her humility while the respectful way she carried herself. Ragna walked alongside Mariana, silently pondering Alicia's absence while a few unnoticed admirers watched out of afar. Recollections of Alicia lingered in his mind, worry etching into his look as he wondered about her safety. Alicia, with a soft grin, reassured him quietly his worry wasn't needed, though she appreciated the believed. Mariana, sensing his worry, chose to stay nearby, believing Alicia could overcome any hardship without needing rescue. The calm moment shattered when Mariana was abruptly splashed in the confront, catching her off guard in the middle of her spellcasting. While Mariana practiced spring water element sorcery, Ragna warned others to stay back. An accidental splash dispatched her glasses flying. Nearby students whispered regarding the marks on Ragna's body, fueling unfounded rumors that his aura brought misfortune. Sitting solo, he sank inside self-doubt, convinced he'd never form real friendships. The belief left him feeling isolated. One soft classmate observed him quietly, their stare lingering as if sensing the weight Ragna carried solo. Unexpectedly, the classmate stood while extended a palm, startling Ragna. With an act of surprising kindness, Ragna was shocked when Jolasis lightly pulled him to sit down beside him, breaking the anticipated affair between them. Around the water area, the mood remained lively, though their soft moment stood out in contrast to the noise. Sitting together, Ragna found himself unsure. It was his first real interaction alongside a supposed capture target, while he couldn't read Jolasis at all. Trying to understand, he asked why Jolasis approached him. The answer remained vague, yet suggested its soft reluctance toward the group. With his back turned to the spring water, Jolasis at last confessed his discomfort. He simply wasn't good with it. Ragna was caught off guard when Jolasis complimented his physique, a remark that made him unsure how to respond. Looking down at his own bare torso, Ragna awkwardly thought regarding whether he should have put on a shirt, as Jolasis quietly asked about a wound. Recollections of Alicia surfaced. Her obvious scar reminded him that showing one's injuries was not a weakness but strength. As the two continued talking, Jolasis expressed admiration for Ragna's strength, impressed by the marks earned in combat out of the Frape territory. Sitting together, they shared a brief understanding. Both had suffered hardship shaped by raising and duty. Ragna, while Jolasis sat in quiet, an odd tension forming between them despite the earlier conversation. Internally, Ragna panicked, calling the case awkward while looking for aid. Even Sebas, his butler, wasn't around to rescue him. They exchanged a few words regarding the seat they both claimed, neither wanting to transfer yet unsure how to continue the moment. Abruptly, Jolasis turned and stared with a blank look, his stare calm and deliberate. Then, he asked a surprising question, one that caught Ragna completely off guard. Have you ever held hands alongside somebody? Jolasis continued with surprising wonders about love, hugs, and love, startling Ragna with their directness and emotional weight. Ragna couldn't follow the unexpected shift. Jolasis ignored all conversational course, pushing forward alongside raw honesty that left him frozen. Internally, Ragna panicked. He realized Jolasis had entered what he called the emotional phase, a turning point triggered following hitting enough tail flags. Out of afar, others noticed too. Jelasis, once remote while aloof, had started showing interest in the protagonist, asking deeply personal wonders. When confronted, Jelasis answered plainly he was simply curious regarding Ragna. That truth, more than anything, struck a deeper chord. Jelasis felt the emotional intensity rising while feared the case might escalate into something surprising. Like a kiss, prior to tension could rise further. Ragna struck alongside humor, launching a playful Brave-style rejection punch to defuse the moment. Yet Jelasis wasn't done. Without notice, he leaned forward while asked a sharp question, "What do you like regarding Alicia?" Caught off guard, Ragna could only ask what was going on. Jelasis's demeanor turned grave, shifting the mood. Then came a cryptic revelation. Jelasis declared that Ragna wasn't supposed to be here, hinting at something far deeper than love. A long pause hung in the air as Jelasis while Ragna exchanged a look. Something unspoken passed between them. Without notice, Jelasis turned away, his look blank. Ragna could only respond alongside a reluctant. Recollections surfaced. Jelasis revealed he had seen Ragna prior to in the dungeon's deepest lair. Their encounter had been no coincidence. The tension escalated when Jelasis declared his intentions. Alongside silent determination, he issued a challenge: he wouldn't allow Ragna to have Alicia. Just as the moment turned grave, they were interrupted by Alicia calling out. Ragna flinched. Confused while caught between emotions, Alicia called out to Jelasis, inviting him to practice water practice alongside her. Despite knowing his discomfort with spring water, he accepted silently. Back at the poolside, Jelasis made another blunt observation, noting that Ragna had never kissed anyone prior to. Looking out over the spring water, he confessed he had. His tone was composure as he recalled a previous loss while counted their rivalry even. Ragna watched out of afar, silent, observing the group from the edge, unsure what he was feeling anymore. Meanwhile, others celebrated small victories in the spring water. Tired out of practice, they retreated to the shade, the atmosphere light while relaxed. Irritated while fueled by emotion, Ragna sat in a soft corner, burning with resolve. His classmates wondered why he still fought so hard for Alicia. His gaze sharpened alongside vengeance. Determined, he swore to make somebody pay. His thoughts spiraling inside grim determination. Confusion followed. Others questioned why a member of Patricia's group would interfere in Alicia's affairs. Ragna couldn't make sense of it either. Yet the mystery challenger had no intentions of hiding anymore. Tired of subtlety, they accepted the confrontation personally. Turmoil neared as another bold person stepped in, threatening to summon Onyx, a worm, to wipe out enemies, until Ragna yelled at him to stop the escalation. Alicia approached alongside worry, questioning what dangerous thoughts Ragna had been muttering to himself during the commotion. Visions of rage while suppressed violence echoed in Ragna's mind, as if a monster inside him was barely creature contained. With a grin that masked his seriousness, Ragna confessed there was somebody he genuinely wanted to kill, brushing off worry too lightly. Alicia didn't laugh. She brought up recent wound reports out of his class, her tone direct while disappointed, causing Ragna to falter. She warned him plainly his actions were reckless, and if he continued down this road, their whole group's standing would only worsen. Despite Alicia's reluctant offer, Ragna steadily decided to wear the collar she handed him. He didn't hesitate this time. Clutching it to his neck, he looked at Alicia alongside sincerity, while declared, "I'm Alicia's." His tone was composure yet resolute. He had made his choice. Even as the atmosphere lightened alongside Mariana's comic search for her already worn glasses, Ragna's mind remained focused on his vow. Elsewhere, Jelasis reflected on the holy relic's significance. It wasn't just symbolic, its retrieval marked Ragna as somebody like him. Back at the water area, Ragna felt a subtle warmth out of the collar around his neck. A soft realization settled in something between duty while belonging had changed. Ragna vowed to remain vigilant, quietly committing to guard both Alicia and Jelasis from harm. Under a bright summer sky, Alicia stood outside the academy building, straightening her hat as sunlight caught her hair down below. Mariana called out to her, curious why she lingered near the entrance instead of heading to class. Alicia admitted she was searching for Ragna, though she guessed he had already stepped away during the lunch break. Mariana's expression shifted the moment Alicia's words registered. She turned her gaze aside, admitting quietly that she had hoped to share lunch with Ragna herself that day. Elsewhere, two students pressed her further, teasing that at the very least a kiss should be expected between a couple. Mariana sighed, confessing she would rather spend her vacation with someone she actually liked. Summer break, she reminded them, would begin the following week. Ragna sat apart from the conversation, arms folded, his face tense with concern. Whatever weighed on his mind, it clearly wasn't lighthearted. He muttered to himself that the situation had grown serious. Alicia approached moments later, asking if he had been lost in thought. Ragna apologized for drifting off, insisting nothing was wrong. Before she could press him, Alicia mentioned that Mariana had been looking for him, holding up a small wrapped parcel as proof. A strange, dangerous magic seemed to radiate faintly from where he sat, though no one addressed it directly. Ragna lowered his head, admitting under his breath that he had done something terrible. He explained that he had only been performing magic detection for Alicia's class, nothing more sinister than that. Still, his eyes betrayed something unsettled beneath the surface. He grumbled that dragging jealousy into matters of romance felt beneath him, comparing it to a battlefield he could have handled with ease if given the chance. Mariana, catching only part of what he said, asked bluntly whether boys and girls naturally grew closer once summer arrived, hinting at kisses and things unspoken. Flustered by her own question, Mariana pulled back, insisting it wasn't the right time to discuss it. She waved off further questions, clearly embarrassed by what she had let slip. Nearby, a group of students exchanged glances, sensing tension building. Mariana straightened up and confronted Ragna directly, accusing him of worrying that Alicia might be taken by someone else. Ragna cleared his throat, caught off guard by how easily she had read him. Another girl watching the exchange smirked, remarking that no one would normally pursue a woman already engaged and living with her partner. Ragna sat quietly, repeating the word normally under his breath, as though trying to convince himself of it. Mariana threatened to tell Alicia everything, prompting Ragna to stop her mid-step. He explained it was simply a background check, nothing more, insisting he was only being cautious for Alicia's sake. Unconvinced, Mariana pointed out that if he was truly that concerned, he could just stay by Alicia's side at all times instead of disappearing so quickly whenever the moment called for it. Ragna's expression tightened. He admitted that if he stayed too close to Mariana, he risked drawing criticism onto both of them. Taking away her time together with Alicia, he said, wouldn't sit right with him. Mariana raised her voice, insisting she wouldn't care about something so trivial. Certain Alicia felt the same way. Ragna cut through her reassurance with a single line: he cared. Even if she didn't, Mariana froze, realizing this was likely the reason he had been keeping his distance from her all along. A door creaked open as Ragna stepped inside, Alicia's voice calling his name from behind. He turned toward her, saying nothing for a moment, the silence stretching between them. Mariana broke the quiet, announcing that everyone should meet in the library after school to work on their summer assignments together. Her sudden enthusiasm caught the room off guard. Though no one objected to the plan, Ragna admitted that from an outsider's perspective, watching the situation unfold had been frustrating. Alicia tilted her head, confused by the comment, while Mariana added that she knew a quiet spot nearby where few students ever gathered. Later, Ragna observed Alicia from a distance, noting how she stood beside Mariana without saying a word. She looked lonely, though she made no effort to voice it. He suspected she had sensed the tension building around them and chose restraint instead, prompting him to consider his next move carefully. Mariana leaned against her hand, thinking aloud that if caring about someone only led to keeping distance, it might make more sense to simply stay close together instead. She admitted the whole situation was giving her genuine heartburn. Ragna offered only a hesitant response, unsure how to answer her directly. As the school day wound down, Mariana waved goodbye, promising to see him after classes. Left alone with his thoughts, Ragna decided he needed to speak with Alicia properly and explain everything without holding back. Watching Mariana walk off, he couldn't help but reflect on how assertive she had become, a trait he supposed came naturally to someone who had once been the story's intended protagonist. The library stood quiet ahead of him, waiting for the conversation he knew he could no longer avoid. Alicia arrived at the library table, admitting she had only just gotten there herself. Ragna hurried over moments later, apologizing for making her wait. Mariana watched the two of them settle in, her eyes fixed silently on Ragna as an old maid ushered him toward his seat, urging him to sit down and get started. Ragna asked what had caught her attention. Mariana replied that his concern for Alicia was painfully obvious, thanking him for it despite the teasing edge in her voice. She pressed further, pointing out that he visited Alicia's home on his days off and even went on dates with her, yet acted distant whenever they were at school together. Ragna admitted plainly that he simply panicked in front of others, unsure how else to explain the contradiction. Alicia glanced briefly toward the exchange before returning to her notes, stating flatly that it wasn't anyone else's concern. She added that she and Ragna moved at their own pace, and that was enough of an answer for her. Ragna made a playful barking sound, trying to lighten the mood, though Alicia barely reacted. The old butler warned that failing to finish the homework would mean dragging it all the way back to the brave domain, prompting the maid to agree it would be troublesome. Alicia called Ragna over, patting the seat beside her and telling him to hurry up and sit down. Ragna mentioned they were short-staffed and might need an extra hand from her at times. Mariana asked hesitantly whether it was really all right for her to join them. He answered simply that of course it was, putting her nerves at ease, settling into her seat. Mariana declared it was time to fit in some magic training alongside the homework, her enthusiasm filling the quiet corner of the library. Ragna asked what kind of souvenir she planned on bringing back. Mariana guessed coffee beans, picturing steam rising from a fresh cup. Ragna explained he wanted everyone to try the coffee that had impressed him so much during his visit to Mariana's place. Mariana's whole posture lit up at the memory. She revealed she kept a huge stock of coffee beans at home and insisted everyone take some back with them, repeating the offer twice with growing excitement, promising she would handle everything herself. Someone asked whether she would have enough left over for herself and the shop after giving so much away. Mariana admitted that before she had even entered school, she had gotten carried away worrying she might fail and ended up buying far more beans than she needed. More than she could manage alone on weekends, Ragna simply agreed, watching as she fretted over the excess. Alicia, arms crossed, said she supposed she would take her up on the offer after all, grateful. Mariana asked if Ragna could show her the proper techniques for making coffee, hoping to share it with everyone in the Brave family if that was all right with him. She laughed softly, admitting she wasn't skilled enough to teach anyone properly but promised to try her best regardless. In another scene, a group praised the drink's quality, remarking that as Alicia's closest friend, she would surely be welcomed warmly wherever she went. The flavor alone enough to win people over. Ragna assured Alicia he was fine when she asked if he needed anything. Explaining he was only stepping away briefly to grab some materials, she thanked him quietly, sipping her coffee as he left the table. Wandering through the rows of shelves, Ragna searched for a specific section labeled Sage Studies, murmuring to himself once he found it. He paused there for a moment, glancing around the quiet aisle. A familiar voice caught his attention nearby. Peering around the shelf, he spotted a young man kneeling before a girl, adjusting something at her ankle while she laughed, telling him it tickled. Ragna recognized the voice immediately. The girl declared that love always unfolded this way. Addressing the boy as Patricia looked on, Ragna identified him internally as Castor von Pentagram, son of the Pentagram family and the country's prime minister, someone he hadn't expected to run into here. The girl asked to be patted gently, calling him Mom. Castor responded with unsettling devotion, declaring she alone was his holy mother and praising himself for working hard behind the scenes, a strange contrast to his prestigious title. Then Ragna stared at the scene from behind the bookshelf, disbelief written across his face as he muttered under his breath that surely this couldn't be right, calling him nothing more than a mama's boy in his mind. Ragna rubbed his temples afterward, complaining that nothing like this had existed in the game he remembered. Castor was supposed to have been portrayed as a clever, responsible figure, not the person he had just witnessed. Behind him, Alicia and Mariana exchanged concerned glances, unsure what had left him so shaken. Patricia stepped closer with a basket in her arms, teasing Castor about whether he had already moved on from someone. Setting the question aside, she asked what had actually become of Edward. Castor pressed his forehead against her, asking softly that she wait for him. Patricia said nothing beyond his name, her expression caught somewhere between surprise and hesitation. He promised to secure a place on the student council in the coming election, vowing that once he did, he would nominate her alongside him. Wrapping his arms around her from behind, Castor insisted she was capable of far more than she believed. Patricia asked, almost in disbelief, whether someone like her, a mere commoner, could really pull it off. He answered without hesitation, telling her he understood her talent better than anyone else. The scene shifted to a quieter memory between two other figures. A young clerk admitted he never imagined they would cross paths again at school after first meeting at the trading company. The girl beside him smiled, replying that he had been on her mind ever since that day. Elsewhere, tension simmered as one boy declared he wanted her to choose him instead. Another figure, watching from a distance, remarked that Edward apparently believed fate had already decided in his favor, since he was the one who had met her first. Patricia's affection played out plainly as she leaned in to kiss the boy beside her. Addressing him gently, turning toward the reader, she smiled and asked if he finally understood, adding that she hadn't even done something like that with Edward yet. Castor exhaled quietly afterward, thanking her under his breath and admitting that now, at last he would be able to sleep peacefully that night. A door creaked open in the distance as Ragna stood watching the exchange unfold. He exhaled heavily once alone again, muttering to himself that no one should ever reveal she had been approaching Castor since they were children. Sitting back against the shelves, he shook his head, calling the whole situation remarkably. Sly Mariana leaned back with her eyes closed, commenting dryly that spying on someone's private kiss showed rather poor manners. Alicia, arms crossed and clearly unimpressed, observed that the threads of the girl's scheme seemed flawlessly woven together, hinting that nothing about the moment had been left to chance. The chapter closed there, marked simply as to be continued. Corner of the library. Ragna's flat stare met a pair of sharp eyes watching him from behind a shelf. A voice cut through the silence, accusing him of peeping on other people kissing, then adding dryly that his manners left something to be desired. The accuser stepped fully into view among the towering shelves, hands laced behind her head with a bored kind of confidence. She introduced herself as Patricia Kindred and asked, almost mockingly, whether he'd switched over from the prince's route. A dark, monstrous shadow loomed in Ragna's mind as her words landed, threatening silently to end her right there. Patricia only pressed her fingers to her lips, delighted at his reaction, and asked if kissing seemed like such a strange thing to him, following it with an even blunter question about whether he was still a virgin. She tilted her head, satisfied with how the scene must have looked to him, before accusing him outright of building himself a harem and fooling around with the girls caught in it. Ragna said nothing, only turning the observation over silently. Patricia flicked her hair back and declared she was simply clearing this world, nothing more, waving a hand as though brushing aside anything he might say and telling him plainly not to get in her way. He countered instantly that the same line applied to her, turning her own logic back at her. She scoffed at the word clearing, insisting that ever since he'd shown up, the story itself had changed, and it had brought her nothing but trouble since. Something caught his eye before he could respond, a heavy pendant hanging from her wrist, unmistakable in its craftsmanship. His mind raced as he recognized it, a sacred relic, the kind that shouldn't exist outside legend. Patricia noted coolly that she must have obtained hers through a different route than his own, refusing to explain further. Ragna asked flatly if that meant they had nothing left to do with each other, and she answered just as flatly that she intended to make him pay for all the trouble he'd caused her. He asked what exactly she meant to do about it. She feigned innocence, calling herself just a frail commoner girl, tilting her head with mock politeness while accusing him of being rude for even suggesting otherwise. She leaned in close, asking if anyone had ever told him he had a terrible personality, her eyes wide and unblinking as she studied his reaction. He said nothing, only narrowing his gaze while she strolled ahead through the vaulted library halls, remarking breezily that she got told that a lot. Later, Alicia greeted him with a pointed comment about how long he'd taken, noting the season with a knowing hum. Flustered, he explained. There'd been a couple kissing in front of the bookshelves, as if that alone accounted for the delay. Nearby, one of the girls perked up at the mention, turning the conversation toward Alicia herself and asking, almost too casually, whether she had ever kissed anyone before. Alicia blinked at the sudden question, and a passing thought crossed Ragna's mind, unbidden. She was a duke's daughter, raised in high society, someone for whom a kiss or two wouldn't be unusual. He caught himself remembering she'd been engaged to Edward the whole time before he arrived in this world. Before anyone could answer, Ragna's knees buckled without warning, drawing alarmed shouts as he clutched at his leg. He waved off the concern, insisting it was just lingering impact from his fight with the Black Dragon, though the sheer force of his collapse suggested otherwise. Alicia, unbothered by the interruption, pressed her fingers to her lips and asked what the big deal was over a mere kiss, her tone light enough to needle him further. Still kneeling, Ragna declared through gritted teeth that he was a member of the brave family, as if invoking the name might steady him. In his thoughts, though, he admitted that whether or not Alicia had that kind of experience changed nothing about how important she was to him. Alicia crossed her arms, telling him plainly she didn't know what he was imagining. But whatever it was, he had the wrong idea entirely. One by one, the others around them rose to their feet in disbelief, murmuring that even Ragna had stood up straighter at her words. She insisted she hadn't done anything of that sort, and he answered simply that he understood, so it hadn't happened yet. After all, elsewhere, familiar faces gathered by a window, greetings passing between them as someone remarked that it had been a while since they'd all seen each other. Not since the pool. Alicia turned toward the voice, steady as ever, while a smaller commotion broke out behind her as Mariana stumbled forward with a startled cry. Jalasis arrived at the study table carrying a stack of printouts, announcing simply that she'd come to deliver them. Ragna glanced up while another figure at the table asked flatly what she'd actually come here for. The girl bent over her books, complained that she couldn't study with someone hovering nearby, prompting Ragna to plant himself firmly in the seat, claiming it as his own. Not stopping there, he added that while he was at it, he might just join the study session too. Jalasis's mouth curled into a thin smirk at being called harsh, unbothered by the accusation. Across from her, Alicia's expression stayed cool as she told her flatly to go back. Gelassus extended a folder toward Ragna, saying she'd just leave it with him then. His hand caught it firmly, the exchange sharp and clipped, betraying more tension than the words let on. Without warning, Alicia grabbed his wrist and pressed her lips briefly to the back of his hand, startling everyone nearby, including a figure watching from the side. Ragna froze, letting out a confused sound, while Alicia's own face flushed red with the shock of what she'd just done, clearly not having thought it through. Gelassus studied the reaction with open curiosity, remarking that judging by it, this really had been his first time. Ragna shot back, accusing her of picking a fight in front of him. Alicia's fiancé, Alicia cut in immediately, denying any fight had happened at all. They were in a library. After all, Gelassus's foot shifted as she warned him not to underestimate her, adding that if he thought having people around meant she wouldn't act, he was mistaken. Alicia suddenly threw her arms around Ragna from behind, catching him off guard as he called out her name in surprise. She murmured against him, asking if he'd calm down now and calling him a good boy, while explaining that a kiss on the hand was basically just a greeting among nobles, telling him not to let it bother him. Gelassus, unimpressed, muttered that it was barbaric. Gelassus turned to leave, announcing coolly that she'd be heading back now, her expression unreadable as she walked off. A train rolled across a high bridge through summer greenery, carrying a quiet hope voiced aloud that the coming break would be a pleasant one for both of them. Leaning out the window, a girl in braids marveled at the view, thrilled that it was her first time leaving the royal capital by train and declaring she could feel the thrill of adventure, only to be scolded for leaning out too far. Around the table, someone noted that carriages didn't usually travel out to brave territory, surprised they'd be taking the train instead. The reply came simply that they did, sometimes. Ragna, seated among crates in the back of a supply cart, admitted the alternative was sneaking in among the supplies or arranging your own carriage. He added that he was looking forward to seeing everyone at the mansion, and the answer beside him was a quiet, simple "Yeah." A memory surfaced of Ragna as a small child, fists raised and shouting, surrounded by adults, recalling how fired up he'd been back then to get out of that territory as soon as he could when he first arrived in this world. Now older, he watched the passing hills with a faint, wistful smile, reflecting that he never expected his hometown would become something he'd come to miss. Simone remarked they could drink good coffee endlessly, prompting a nearby voice to note dryly that he'd already gone to the bathroom not long ago, wondering aloud if he was just drinking too much coffee. He waved them off, saying yes, yes, and telling them to go on ahead. The train churned steadily along the tracks, wheels grinding beneath the carriage as the journey pressed onward. Ragna stepped through the narrow corridor between train cars, his expression calm and unreadable as he made his way back toward the others. Rough-looking men closed in around Ragna the moment he stepped through the doorway, their expressions carrying open menace. He met their stares with quiet wariness, sensing danger in the crowded space. One of the men leaned in with a mocking grin, addressing him with a drawn-out, taunting greeting that dripped with sarcasm rather than warmth. Irritation flared among the group as they accused him of avoiding them, tying his frequent absences to talk of a fiancé and complaining about how often his companions kept appearing. Hands patted him down roughly, the contact drawing immediate protest. He pulled back, demanding to know who these people were, while one of them dismissed his anger with careless laughter. Their leader whipped the group into a frenzy, warning them not to underestimate him despite his youth and ordering an attack. Others speculated aloud about enemy spies or hired assassins from a rival family. 3 devastating techniques tore through the scene in quick succession: ice, lightning, and a final crushing blow, each named aloud as it struck. The chaos faded into quiet as the train pressed on through open countryside, mountains, and water stretching beneath a calm sky. A single tired breath marked the end of the struggle. Exhausted, Ragna slumped against a pile of luggage, wondering how much longer until they finally reached brave territory. Piecing together the ambush, he connected it to an earlier threat from Patricia, dismissing the attackers as weak despite the effort behind their assault. A quiet resolve settled over him. Staying close to his companions seemed enough to keep further trouble at bay. Cramped quarters brought new complaints as someone shifted uncomfortably nearby, while another marveled at the unfamiliar rows of seating in the general passenger car. The group fell into an uneasy stillness, arms folded and expressions guarded, Ragna's own thoughts trailing off unspoken. Drowsiness overtook one of the girls, her head drifting onto a companion's shoulder, the sudden closeness catching Ragna off guard. Ragna froze as he spotted a familiar face standing across from him. His mind raced, unable to process why this particular man had turned up in a place like this. Beside him, Alicia regarded the blonde stranger with quiet recognition, murmuring only that he was her former fiancé. Recognition flickered across the blonde man's face as he studied Alicia, her name slipping out in a hushed tone, flustered. Ragna stepped forward and introduced himself, stammering through his name as Ragna Velbrave. The stranger's eyes narrowed, questioning who exactly stood before him. Alicia broke the tension with practiced composure. She acknowledged that the man likely carried a great deal he wanted to say, but for the moment she simply gestured toward the empty seats. Urging everyone to sit first, settled into the train car, the blonde man remarked on how oddly empty the carriage had been for this time of year. Connecting the dots aloud, Alicia added dryly that the emptiness was clearly their doing, hinting at some hidden arrangement behind the scenes. Ragna, still processing everything, offered only a short, resigned reply. The stranger, introduced through conversation as Clive, marveled at how far his companion's undercover operations had expanded. His companion brushed off the compliment, admitting that such growth wasn't something he took pride in. Clive pressed further, astonished that they were currently riding in the general passenger car of all places. A quiet smirk crossed the blonde noble's face as he leaned in, admitting he had a secret to share. Using a barrier to intercept the vibrations in the air and keep their conversation private, he revealed there was something only Ragna could help him with. Ragna's expression twisted the moment he heard the plan, letting out a sharp sound of disbelief. The girl beside the blonde noble, dressed beneath a wide sun hat, explained cheerfully that she had already arranged to meet someone named Patricia at the final station stop. She wanted Ragna to guard them during the meeting. Ragna questioned what sort of situation would even call for that kind of setup. The blonde noble reassured him that exposure wasn't a concern, since for the time being they were all posing as ordinary commoners. His companion chimed in with a warning of his own, admitting that if word got out, he wouldn't be able to protect them. Ragna's eyes darkened beneath his fringe, saying nothing as the weight of the situation settled over him. Later, Alicia's attention sharpened as she noticed something across the car, her expression tightening. Ragna's thoughts drifted uneasily, realizing that the girl named Patricia had been pursuing Edward's route in parallel the entire time. The revelation left him groaning under his breath, clearly displeased by what he was piecing together. As the journey wore on, Ragna found himself displaced from where he felt he belonged, murmuring that he should have been the one occupying that spot. Alicia, meanwhile, had drifted into sleep, telling someone gently that it was fine and to stay resting a little longer. Startled awake moments later, she blinked in confusion, unsure what exactly she had just done. Samoan teased her, pointing out that she had actually fainted from the shock earlier. Alicia laughed it off nervously, admitting she'd nearly passed out entirely before adding with a nervous edge that there was surely no way royalty would be riding in a place like this. Her realization hit all at once, and she let out a startled cry, insisting this couldn't possibly be a dream. The blonde noble greeted her with a casual smile, asking if she was finally awake. Alicia straightened, addressing him formally as Your Highness, before another girl bolted upright and called out the name Mariana in surprise. The tension resurfaced as the blonde man reminded Alicia that he had specifically asked her to avoid contact with Mariana, hoping to prevent triggering trauma tied to her past experiences with nobility. Alicia started to protest, insisting there was more to it, but her words trailed off. She pressed on anyway, gesturing around the carriage and explaining that this was simply the general passenger car, a place royalty ordinarily wouldn't think to enter so carelessly. The blonde noble rubbed his temple, sighing at how she was still repeating the same argument even now. Elsewhere, memories resurfaced of an earlier incident, with the blonde noble muttering under his breath that he genuinely hoped some of her old sense of superiority might have shifted since then. Alicia, dressed now in formal attire, walked ahead with unwavering composure, seemingly unfazed by the remark. On the train once more, Alicia knelt beside a young girl, holding her close as she challenged the blonde noble directly, questioning whether his kindness toward the commoner girl was genuine or simply an act to repair his own reputation. He countered coolly, asking if she was only concerned because her parents had instructed her to be. Ragna's posture stiffened as he approached, calling out with a short greeting. His attention shifted toward Alicia, who turned her head slightly. Sensing the interruption, Alicia reached toward him, urging him to calm down as tension flickered across his expression. Ragna clicked his tongue quietly, clearly holding something back, while the blonde noble looked on, expression unreadable. Ragna extended his hand toward Alicia, addressing the matter directly by bringing up the inhumane acts taking place inside the academy. The blonde noble stood his ground, countering that if this exchange was happening outside the academy's boundaries, then he too should have the right to speak freely on the subject. A commotion broke out nearby as another girl rushed over, exclaiming that Alicia's former followers were still around, and that she had heard they'd continued harassing Patricia. Alicia's expression fell into confusion, her voice quiet as she asked exactly what was being talked about. Fury settled behind the smile Alicia wore as she confronted the blonde noble, accusing him of carrying the exact same rotten behavior he'd shown before he left. Meanwhile, in another room, he stood over a girl lying collapsed on the floor, admitting quietly that he had no proof yet, but suspected something. Turning her head away, Alicia pressed the accusation further, certain that he was the one orchestrating everything behind the scenes, all for the sake of tormenting Patricia. Ragnar's grip tightened as a dark thought crossed his mind, wondering silently whether he should simply kill the man standing before him despite his royal blood. His expression hardened into something unreadable, while Alicia, sensing the shift in atmosphere, turned back toward the room with quiet unease. The blonde noble sneered, insisting that her rotten nature clearly hadn't changed even after their engagement had ended before he could finish. Alicia's hand shot forward, striking him with enough force to leave visible claw, like marks slashing across the panel, silencing him mid-sentence. Shock spread across every face in the room. The blonde noble's eyes went wide in disbelief. Ragnar's jaw dropped as he processed what had just happened, and beside them, the girl with braided hair stared with equal astonishment. Trembling with anger, the bespectacled girl shouted that he had no idea what he was even talking about, demanding to know how anyone could say something so careless without knowing the full truth. Alicia yanked her sleeve free from his grip, declaring sharply that she had never once asked for whatever he claimed to be offering. He stumbled through a defense, insisting weakly that he'd only meant it for her sake. Elsewhere, thoughts drifted toward what it might feel like standing in Alicia's shoes. The bespectacled girl imagined that returning to the academy after everything would hurt far too much for her to bear, having only just learned fragments of the incident from a passing teacher. Walking beside the blonde noble, another girl reflected aloud on how those who had taken everything from her, and even herself for allowing it to happen, would leave her feeling nothing but resentment. Wide-eyed, the girl with glasses cried out Alicia's name, her voice cracking with disbelief at what she had just witnessed unfold. Two classmates whispered among themselves, observing that no matter how horribly she was treated, she never let any of it show on her face, enduring every insult in silence. A radiant smile spread across Alicia's face as she recalled how the girl treated her as an equal and greeted her kindly despite everything, while beside her, the bespectacled girl clenched her fists, visibly moved by the memory. Standing among empty desks, the smaller girl asked hesitantly whether he could really go through with something just because his parents had told him to. He answered simply, admitting it was something like that. Alicia apologized softly, saying she was sorry for making her say all those things on her behalf. The other girl, still shaken, could only whisper her name in response, her voice trailing off into silence. Eyes closed, the bespectacled girl declared that she didn't care if they threw her in prison for it, insisting that if anyone insulted her best friend, she would lash out no matter who they were, royalty included. Warmth filled the moment as the girl praised Alicia for her strength, admitting she respected her deeply. Alicia lowered her gaze, denying the compliment quietly, insisting she wasn't strong at all. Nearby, Ragnar watched the exchange in silence, his expression softening. Confusion flickered across her face as she asked what he meant. Before realization dawned, he was referring to her burn scar. She answered simply that it wasn't anything to worry about, her voice calm against the backdrop of the towering academy building. Cheerfully, the girl offered to heal the scar using her magic, promising it would vanish given a little time. Alicia turned to consider the offer, her expression thoughtful as baskets of gathered blossoms sat between them. Gently declining, Alicia explained that she intended to carry the scar with her, calling it proof that she had fought and survived, a mark she planned to keep as she continued moving forward. Leaning close, the girl murmured that from now on, she would carry those wounds together with her, promising to be the one who healed them whenever she could. Alicia closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the words settle over her in quiet comfort. Alicia pulled the younger girl into a gentle embrace, whispering her gratitude softly. A quiet reply followed, addressing her only as Your Highness, while Mariana's expression carried a mixture of sorrow and restraint, her thoughts unspoken behind glassy eyes. Bowing low before the blonde prince, the pink-haired girl declared that if her words had counted as Elfay's Magus Fay, she would accept full responsibility for them herself. He straightened, offering his own apology for what had happened earlier, his tone stiff with discomfort. Startled by his sudden humility, Alicia stared at him in silence, unsure how to respond. Flustered, he backpedaled quickly, insisting that wasn't what he meant, his composure cracking under the weight of the moment. Ragnar's thoughts settled into something heavier as he watched the exchange unfold. Whenever someone forced their way through a situation, he reflected, The burden always ended up falling on someone else entirely, someone who never asked to carry it, resting against her pillow. Alicia's memories drifted back to the truth behind her scars, recognizing that even those marks traced back to Edward, forcing his own selfishness onto everyone around him. Outside a grand estate, two figures waited near the entrance as a woman in a wide hat approached, her back turned toward them. Even so, the narration continued, hinting that circumstances hadn't changed despite everything that had happened. Warmth touched Alicia's expression as she reflected on her own resilience, accepting everything that had come her way. As his fiancée, she had chosen to live fully in the present, embracing life with everything she had left to give. Sharp awareness crossed the prince's face as he admitted, quietly, that officially he wasn't even supposed to be riding in that particular carriage. Traveling incognito, he explained, had become something of a necessity for him lately. Firmly, Ragna interjected, refusing to let the matter be dismissed so easily. Alicia added her own reasoning, stating plainly that under the circumstances none of it could reasonably be considered L-phase. Magus Fey, a friendly hand, clapped down on the prince's shoulder as a dark-haired boy suggested they all move to another carriage together. Recognition dawned across the boy's face moments later, realizing with surprise that the man beside him was, if he remembered correctly, Alicia's former fiancé. Wide-eyed, Alicia's thoughts turned inward as she considered how much the boy beside her had changed since traveling to brave territory, the shift in him impossible to ignore. Determination settled into the prince's voice as he declared that from this point forward, he intended to be the one protecting Alicia himself. The boy beside him blinked in surprise, then smiled, remarking that she had always been a good woman, strong in ways that mattered. A tired sigh escaped as someone admitted that if it were up to a particular person, things might actually work out. Watching a cloaked figure disappear through a doorway, he murmured his understanding, accepting the possibility without further argument. Since his position prevented him from offering an apology directly, the pink-haired girl stepped in to apologize on his behalf, addressing the boy who had bowed low before them, expressing regret for everything that had happened. As the train pushed onward through snow-covered mountains, the boy waved off their concern with a tired laugh, admitting he'd grown used to hardship long ago before bidding them farewell. One of the girls remarked sympathetically that he clearly had it rough as well. Frustration bubbled up from the smallest girl in the group, who grumbled about why that prince couldn't simply apologize himself, insisting she felt terrible for Alicia's sake. The others exchanged a glance, saying nothing as her irritation continued to simmer. A playful warning followed as one companion teased that making royalty bow their heads could theoretically get someone executed, prompting a startled yelp from the girl by the window. Another voice quickly scolded him for frightening her unnecessarily. Walking alone down the train's narrow aisle, the prince's retreating figure carried an air of quiet defeat. Someone murmured that it was somewhat sad not being able to apologize even when the desire to do so was genuinely there. Affection softened Alicia's expression as she held Mariana close, remarking that she truly was kind right down to the very end. Nearby, the mood shifted lighter as someone announced that lunchtime had arrived, urging everyone to set differences aside and eat together, prompting an exasperated protest about dropping the subject already. Munching contentedly on her food, the bespectacled girl admitted that what Ragna had said earlier still lingered in her mind, sending an unexpected chill down her spine. Even now, confusion crossed Alicia's face as one of the girls turned toward her, prompting a nod of confirmation with a casual right. Alicia? Ragna sat nearby, caught off guard as the words settled over him. Behind him, the prince's voice carried quiet resolve, repeating his earlier vow that he alone would be the one protecting Alicia from now on. An invisible arrow seemed to strike straight through Ragna's chest as the weight of the statement hit him unexpectedly. Alicia, flustered, stammered out agreement, admitting shyly that it was indeed true before offering him a soft thanks. Caught off guard, Ragna mumbled an awkward reply, his composure crumbling as the two girls beside him exchanged knowing, teasing glances. The journey brought Ragna, Alicia, and Mariana to the edge of the frontier, where rolling hills stretched beneath a wide, open sky. Alicia stared out at the landscape with wide eyes, taking in her first glimpse of the Braves' territory. Excitement colored her expression as she pointed toward the horizon, marveling at how different this place felt from anything she'd seen before. Walking along a quiet fence line, the trio paused to breathe in the countryside air. Mariana commented on how fresh it felt, compared to what she was used to, while Alicia agreed with a soft laugh, calling the whole scene peaceful. Ragna stood a step behind them, watching the two girls enjoy the calm of the open fields. A dragonfly darted past, catching Alicia's attention instantly. She spun around to track its flight, momentarily distracted from the conversation. Curiosity took over as she wondered aloud whether the air back in the royal capital had always felt heavier, questioning if the protective barrier surrounding the capital was the reason the air there never felt this clean. Nearing their destination, Ragna pointed out something in the distance, letting the others know they were close. Mariana lifted her face toward the open sky, savoring the unobstructed wind rushing past her. She shrugged when asked what she thought waited ahead, more interested in the sensation of freedom the countryside offered than in speculating about what came next. The peaceful walk ended abruptly. Rapid footsteps thundered from the direction of the estate, and before Ragna could react, a group of servants came sprinting toward them, shouting a boisterous welcome. Maids and butlers alike converged in a chaotic rush, arms outstretched, voices overlapping. Ragna simply closed his eyes and accepted the onslaught with quiet resignation. Clearly no stranger to this kind of greeting. Once the initial commotion settled, the household staff turned their attention to the guest of honor. One of the men called out warmly, addressing Alicia by name with unmistakable affection, signaling that her arrival meant far more to this household than a simple visit. Two maids expressed how empty the mansion had felt in her absence, admitting the halls seemed to lose their life without her presence. One declared she'd been waiting eagerly through every storm and gust of wind just for this moment. Alicia responded warmly, greeting everyone as she stepped back into the place she now considered home, and a quiet giggle escaped her at the outpouring of affection. Ragna's own homecoming was quieter, but no less genuine. His butler, Sebas, gave a small nod filled with warmth, greeting him with practiced formality despite the fondness clearly written across his weathered face. Ragna returned the gesture simply, a brief acknowledgement that this house was still his. Attention soon shifted to Mariana, who found herself unexpectedly at the center of a knowing exchange between the servants. One remarked that word of her friendship with Alicia had already reached the household ahead of time. Flustered, Mariana stumbled over her response while two younger maids exchanged puzzled glances, clearly not having expected such a declaration. Alicia stepped in to clear things up, wrapping an arm around Mariana and introducing her properly. She explained without hesitation that Mariana wasn't just an acquaintance, but her closest friend, speaking the words with evident pride and affection. Mariana composed herself and offered a proper introduction of her own, closing her eyes with a warm smile as she identified herself as Alicia's best friend. She asked politely for everyone's continued kindness during her stay, though something in her expression shifted the moment she opened her eyes again, as though a flicker of nervous realization had crossed her mind. The estate staff wasted no time extending their hospitality. A maid fanned the air enthusiastically, urging the guests to relax and make themselves at home, while a burly man laughed heartily and apologized for the earlier chaos of their welcome. Alicia thanked them sincerely, and Mariana was soon offered to be personally guided to her room. Later, walking beneath a canopy of rustling leaves, Sebas turned the conversation toward Ragna's time away at school. He observed that his young master seemed to be enjoying himself there, adding that the thought alone brought him genuine happiness. Ragna answered with a simple, easy confirmation, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. From a distance, Mariana watched Alicia's expression with quiet fascination, noting how much brighter her friend's smiles had become. She attributed the change entirely to their friendship, observing that Alicia laughed more freely now than she ever used to. A small but meaningful transformation visible even from afar. Sebas pressed further, curious whether Ragna had managed to form any friendships with boys his own age. Ragna's only response was a short deflection, asking not to be questioned on the matter, his tone carrying a hint of discomfort that suggested the topic wasn't one he particularly wanted to explore. Pressed to elaborate, Ragna offered his own perspective on friendship, stating flatly that bonds weren't built through physical roughhousing. Sebas mused aloud about the idea of male friendships, picturing something closer to spirited sparring matches, an image that clearly didn't align with how Ragna viewed genuine connection. Steam curled from a freshly poured cup as the two continued their walk toward the mansion. Sebas admitted that the entire household sincerely hoped their young master would find companions of his own someday. Ragna laughed the comment off lightly, asking everyone not to get their hopes up too high. Inside, a maid experienced her own moment of delight over a steaming cup of coffee, her eyes practically sparkling as she declared she'd never tasted anything quite like it. She praised its richness and depth of flavor enthusiastically, clearly struck by how different this coffee was from anything she'd encountered before. An older butler agreed, remarking that beans of this quality were exactly what one would expect from the royal capital, noting how vastly superior they were to what the household typically brewed. Around them, the rest of the staff shared in the small celebration, murmuring happily over their own cups as the warmth of the moment spread through the room. Watching the scene unfold from a short distance, Ragnar wore a slightly weary expression, resting his chin on his hand. Sebas stood beside him, observing the same reaction with quiet amusement, pointing out how strikingly different everyone's response was compared to the coffee Ragnar had once prepared himself. A subtle jab delivered with a knowing smile. Sebas pressed further into the earlier commotion, noting how the coffee had struck the servants' sleepy minds with quite a jolt. Two staff members reeled from the sudden caffeine hit, sputtering as they clutched their cups. Ragnar, overhearing the exchange, called out his butler's name in mild protest, insisting his own coffee had carried its own kind of merit, despite the reaction it usually provoked. Word of the newly developed brew spread quickly through the household. A maid lit up at the mention of it, practically glowing with excitement as she declared she absolutely wanted to try what everyone kept talking about. Mariana, sipping her own cup nearby, extended an invitation asking if she wanted to join them on their next trip out to the fields. Ragnar considered being left behind at the mansion, but the household wouldn't allow it. Several servants immediately volunteered to tag along, refusing to let him stay isolated. A maid stepped forward eagerly, offering to lead the way herself, and the group set off together. Footsteps rustling through the grass toward the outskirts of the estate, rain drizzled lightly over the open countryside as Alicia gestured toward the land stretched before them. She called Mariana's attention to the field, explaining with quiet pride that this was the plot they had all worked together to cultivate, the fruits of shared effort now visible in neat, growing rows. Mariana crouched beside the soil, suggesting they experiment with earth magic to help the crops along. Alicia knelt down as well, lifting a handful of dark, damp earth and murmuring that improving the soil quality seemed like the next logical goal behind them. The older farmhands watched with quiet approval, clearly pleased by the girl's initiative. Ideas began to take shape as Alicia looked out over the wider plains beyond the cultivated field. She proposed that if they extended their efforts to the open land they'd passed on the way here, the area could grow into a major production zone. Mariana, imagining plates piled high with vegetables, added that a bountiful harvest could become a genuine industry for the entire brave territory. Watching the two girls plan and dream together, Ragnar found himself smiling faintly from a short distance away, though he said nothing aloud. The scene carried a quiet sense of possibility, as though something meaningful was beginning to take root alongside the crops themselves. Later, Alicia held a freshly picked tomato between her hands, laughing softly with Mariana beside her. A quiet narration drifted through the moment, reflecting on how it felt as though an entirely new chapter was starting to unfold from this simple day in the fields, and wondering almost absently why that feeling had settled in so strongly. Back at the estate, over coffee, Sebas turned to Ragnar with a curious hum, admitting there was something on his mind he wanted to ask about. His posture straightened slightly, the kind of shift that usually preceded a question Ragnar wasn't especially eager to answer. The question landed directly. Had he made any progress with Lady Alicia? Ragnar's reaction was immediate and physical, coffee spraying from his mouth in startled surprise, the bluntness of the inquiry catching him completely off guard. Sebas pressed on despite the reaction, explaining that after so many years of service, he couldn't help but worry about the matter. Ragnar, still recovering, demanded to know what had prompted such a sudden question. Clearly unsettled by how directly his butler had gone after the subject, standing close together in a wooded clearing, Ragnar and Alicia kept a noticeable gap between them, roughly the width of an outstretched arm. Sebas observed dryly that there had been little change before and after her time at the academy, especially given how much distance still lingered between the two of them. Mariana, overhearing the assessment, groaned in frustration and questioned aloud when exactly their household had ever been strong in matters of romance. Alicia clenched her fist with sudden determination, declaring that such timidity had no place in a family known for bravery, her tone carrying more conviction than her usual composed demeanor. Ragnar, walking alongside Alicia through the streets with their hands linked, overheard none of this directly, though the moment itself quietly contradicted the earlier claim from behind. An unnamed observer noted under their breath that it wasn't as though there had been no progress at all. Determined to defend himself, Ragnar straightened and declared with more confidence than usual that they had even held hands during a date, framing it as clear evidence of forward motion in their relationship. A maid slipped into the room at that exact moment, delivering additional documents without so much as glancing up from her task. Sebas responded to the announcement with heavy sarcasm, calling it amazing progress in a tone that suggested he found the bar considerably lower than expected. The maid quietly set the papers down and turned to leave, her expression carefully neutral despite having just witnessed the entire exchange. Elsewhere, two maids exchanged a quiet moment of amusement over the household's various shortcomings, one of them stifling a laugh behind her hand. Outside, Sebas remarked dryly that their household was seriously short-staffed at the moment, prompting an abrupt decision that someone ought to be let go to compensate. Confused by the sudden shift, Sebas asked what exactly was meant by the comment. Ragna, seated at his desk with documents spread before him, replied flatly that now really wasn't the time for such matters, his tone carrying more weight than the casual conversation had suggested a moment earlier. The mood darkened as Ragna's thoughts turned towards something far more serious. He recalled a demon wreathed in flame, a presence stronger than anything they'd encountered even during an actual war, something that had surfaced during a practical training exercise at the academy when they'd fought someone possessed by such a creature. The identity of that student came to light, the son of the Ignite family. Sebas absorbed the revelation with a heavy exhale, remarking that their household hadn't exactly been gentle in its own upbringing methods either, before adding grimly that the Ignite family's teachings must have truly fallen far, given that their own son now carried a demon within him. Ragna processed the revelation with a puzzled frown, repeating the phrase under his breath as though testing its weight. Sebas confirmed it quietly, acknowledging that possession by a demon explained everything they'd witnessed. Overhead, a streak of cloud cut silently across the sky, mirroring the heaviness settling over the conversation. Sebas turned toward the window, his back to the room, and spoke with quiet gravity about power gained through dependence on another force. Such strength, he warned, led inevitably toward ruin, a truth he seemed to have carried with him for a long time. Ragna absorbed the warning without argument, admitting it rang true and promising to keep the lesson in mind. His grip tightened briefly, a small physical acknowledgement of how seriously he'd taken the words. Sebas shifted the discussion toward practical concerns, pointing out that dealing with monsters had become routine for them, but a demon demanded far more careful preparation. Ragna straightened at that, declaring with sudden resolve that only one course of action made sense. Determination sharpened his voice as he insisted that all three of them simply needed to improve their ability to counter such threats. His fist clenched with conviction, the earlier uncertainty replaced by clear purpose. Behind him, Alicia added quietly that she had no choice in the matter since she was the one being specifically targeted. Sebas reacted with theatrical dismay at the plan taking shape, lamenting that bringing young ladies along for training instead of a proper vacation seemed a strange choice, though he grudgingly admitted it was exactly the kind of decision he'd expect from his young master. Ragna cut through the sentimentality directly, stating there was no room for romantic distractions during training. Whatever softer feelings existed would have to wait until the more pressing danger had been addressed first. Listening to the exchange, Sebas's expression shifted, a plan quietly forming behind his weathered features. He mentioned having an idea that could resolve both problems simultaneously, and upon hearing the reasoning, he nodded slowly, accepting that the approach made sense given the circumstances. The group found themselves in an unfamiliar storage room deep within the estate, stacked high with crates and barrels. Alicia and Mariana exchanged confused glances, wondering aloud what this hidden space might be and how neither of them had known it existed until now. Ragna asked Sebas directly what exactly this so-called Brave Territory exclusive special event entailed, his tone edged with suspicion. Sebas urged him to think back, hinting that the answer lay somewhere in Ragna's own memory rather than requiring further explanation. Sebas guided the conversation toward their first date together in the mountains, asking what catalyst had originally drawn Ragna and Alicia closer. He answered his own question before Ragna could, explaining that sharing an extraordinary experience together had been the key. With that logic in place, he revealed his plan. Summoning a demon would recreate that same closeness, relying on something akin to a suspension bridge effect to push them nearer to each other. Footsteps echoed against stone as the group descended a narrow staircase lit by a single lantern. Mariana asked nervously whether this had anything to do with demon summoning. Sebas confirmed it plainly, explaining they'd be training specifically to fight such creatures, while the title card marking a new chapter flashed behind them. Concern flickered across Ragna's face as he turned to voice an objection, insisting that Mariana couldn't be placed in danger over this. Alicia echoed the worry, questioning aloud whether the plan was really acceptable given what it might expose her friend to. Addressing the concern directly, Ragna explained his reasoning to Alicia and Mariana. Since Alicia remained a target, he argued, it only made sense to strengthen Mariana's defenses as well, treating her safety as inseparable from Alicia's own. Confidence radiated from Ragna as he assured the girls he'd handle every detail personally, urging them to simply enjoy the summoning experience itself. Bold lettering framed the moment as a heart-pounding summoning adventure, promising exciting memories from what was meant to be a carefree summer activity. Doubt crept into Mariana's expression as she wondered whether everyone from Ragna's territory operated with this same intensity. Alicia, standing beside her, admitted with a resigned smile that yes, this was simply how Ragna tended to be. Wolves snarled on either side of Ragna as memories surfaced of his family's harsh methods. Sebas reflected that their household had always pushed its children into extreme situations meant to mirror the brutality of war. Noting that such trials had been endured before and would continue without exception, silence lingered for a moment before Ragna offered his own justification, stating that this exact philosophy was precisely why the brave household had grown so formidable over generations. Alicia's expression sharpened with sudden alertness, a small exclamation escaping her as something caught her attention. Massive stone doors loomed ahead, their surface etched with heavy bolts and reinforced hinges, hinting at the scale of what lay behind them. Astonishment swept over both girls as they stepped into a cavernous room, an enormous open space enclosed by wooden rafters and scattered crates. Alicia's voice rose in disbelief, questioning aloud what exactly this strange chamber could possibly be. Explanation came swiftly from Sebas, who described the space as a refuge built for moments when enemies breached the territory. Simply put, he called it a shelter, one designed to protect the household during its most vulnerable hours. Details of its construction spilled out as Sebas pointed toward the mountains, mentioning that golems had been used to raise the walls, granting them exceptional durability. Alicia gasped at the revelation, clearly stunned that something as rare as golems had gone into building the fortress. While Sebas added that magical reinforcement further strengthened every barrier, panic flashed across Alicia's face as she noticed Mariana behaving strangely, gasping and clutching at something with visible distress. She demanded to know exactly what her friend thought she was doing, alarm evident in her sharp tone. Laughter followed shortly after as Sebas complimented Mariana's surprising aptitude for life in the brave territory, calling it genuinely impressive. He quickly walked the comment back with a flustered denial, waving it off as a joke while Ragna chuckled awkwardly beside him. Knowledge from a book prompted Mariana's next move, as she explained that summoning rituals traditionally required some kind of offering. A swirling dark portal responded to her gesture, opening with startling suddenness, and Sebas praised her for clearly knowing her craft. Chaos erupted the instant the portal fully opened, releasing a massive hulking creature that lurched forward with startling force. Everyone recoiled in shock at the sheer size of what had just emerged into the room. Recognition dawned slowly as the group examined their catch, with someone noting it had been caught fresh that very morning. Mariana's eyes widened at the sight, exclaiming that this was her first time ever seeing an orc lord in person, while Alicia muttered under her breath about yet another absurd monster joining their growing list. Fascination overtook caution as Mariana reached toward the creature, speculating that certain parts of it likely fetched a high price on the market. Alicia yelped in alarm, warning her friend sharply not to touch whatever she'd been eyeing. Commotion continued as the girls squabbled over the specimen, prompting Ragna to step forward and call for order. With a firm tone, he announced it was time to begin, redirecting everyone's attention back toward the actual training at hand. Guidance came next as Ragna instructed on channeling magic while focusing intently on a specific wish. He closed his eyes, murmuring quietly to himself about what that wish should be. Standing at the center of a glowing magical circle etched into the floor, force ripped through the chamber without warning, magic tearing violently at Ragna as he struggled against the pull. Strain twisted his features as he realized what was happening, gritting out through clenched teeth that his own magic was actively being stripped away from him. Energy tore violently through the summoning circle as Ragna's magic surged outward with uncontrolled force, light and static erupting in every direction around him. Towering above the circle, a tall, shadowed figure emerged from swirling darkness, rain like streaks falling around its jagged silhouette. Ragna's eyes narrowed with recognition, muttering under his breath about the presence looming before him, while a low, mocking chuckle echoed from within the smoke. Fangs bared in a wide, malicious grin as the demon addressed Ragna directly, sneering at the audacity of a reckless brat daring to summon and challenge him to a duel. He introduced himself grandly as the demon known as Supernova, a Maimo, his clawed hands flexing as he declared that the boy's wish had already been received. Shock rippled through the group as Sebas and the girls stood frozen behind Ragna, one of them letting out a startled cry at the sight of the towering demon looming just ahead. Retreat came without warning as the demon suddenly turned and fled, streaking away into the distance with a dramatic farewell shouted over his shoulder, leaving Ragna staring after him in stunned silence. Explanation followed quickly as Sebas noted that the brave family had, throughout history, defeated a considerable number of demons, which likely explained why encountering their bloodline alone was enough to trigger such panic. Someone exclaimed in disbelief that a demon had genuinely just run away, questioning whether such a thing could really happen. Confusion lingered on Ragnar's face as he wondered aloud what exactly the demon had seen in him to provoke such a hasty escape. Mariana marveled at the spectacle, praising him for being frightening enough to make even demons flee, while Alicia simply laughed to herself, clearly amused by the whole situation. Attention turned toward preparation as someone offered items for the group to choose from. Mariana perked up immediately, declaring excitedly that it looked like their turn had finally come. Protection took the shape of a small gemstone as it was introduced to the group, described as a white agate capable of shielding the mind from the whispered manipulations of demons. History deepened the item's significance as its origins were explained within the Brave family, a lineage that had never lacked for enemies. This particular tradition had been passed down through countless generations specifically to protect the lady of the house, illustrated by a silhouette of a couple exchanging the stone before an old estate. Warning tightened Sebas's expression as he stressed that any contact with demons carried extreme danger, instructing both girls firmly to keep the protective stone on their person at all times. They responded with hesitant but obedient agreement. Nervousness crept into Mariana's voice as she admitted her heart had started racing, prompting Alicia to reassure her gently that she would keep her safe. From below, someone reacted with exaggerated shock at the mention of what sounded suspiciously like a suspension bridge effect taking hold. Focus settled over Mariana as she opened her spellbook, exhaling slowly before announcing with quiet determination that she was ready to begin her own summoning attempt. Ritual words flowed from her lips as she called forth the restless dead of another realm, a domain ruled by hunger and thirst, offering in exchange a fragment of the mortal world they longed for. Silence followed heavily as intricate markings glowed faintly across the stone floor beneath her. Composure held steady on Mariana's face despite the intensity of the ritual, her expression calm even as she knelt before the summoning circle, book raised and chant continuing, though key portions of her incantation went conspicuously unspoken. Curiosity prompted Sebas to offer his own theory, suggesting that the muted reaction likely stemmed from Mariana's holy attribute magic, which tended to make demons wary of approaching her directly. Mariana, overhearing, asked uncertainly what exactly was happening around her. Clarity arrived through an unexpected source as an elderly examiner nearby remarked on her unusually holy nature. Mariana nodded enthusiastically, recalling that she'd heard something remarkably similar during her original examination as well, the pieces finally clicking into place. Realization struck Ragnar suddenly as he recalled a detail he'd completely overlooked. Admitting aloud that he'd forgotten Mariana had once held the title of Scientist. Passing the metaphorical baton onward, attention shifted toward Alicia, who acknowledged quietly that she supposed she was the last one left to take her turn. Tension crept into the moment as Ragnar reached out instinctively, saying her name softly in concern. Alicia's expression remained tight and guarded, a single tear tracing down her cheek as she gripped his sleeve without offering an explanation. Doubt surfaced in Alicia's voice as she studied the protective white agate in her grip, questioning aloud whether it was even appropriate for her to use such a stone. Reasoning that if she too was now considered part of the Brave family, perhaps this particular protection wasn't meant for someone like her. In a quiet hallway, a stern manservant asks Alicia whether she intends to return the item in her possession behind him. Other servants make clear their position whatever she decides. They will honor Alicia Sama's choice without objection. A closed fist rises into view. Fingers uncurl, and a small coin drops from one palm into another, the exchange silent and deliberate. The old butler studies her with a measured expression and calls it a wise decision. Alicia meets his gaze steadily and tells him she'll keep the coin. Standing beside a young man in the dim storeroom, she admits her current strength falls short of what is needed. Still, she vows that one day she'll train hard enough to stand at his side as a true member of the Brave family. He studies her in silence, uncertain what she means. She turns partway toward him, telling him to wait just a little longer. Behind that moment, memory surfaces, the butler recoiling in shock as smoke curls from something in his grip, while she watches on unreadable. Her voice returns. Steady. All right then, here she goes. The old man's warning cuts through the quiet, chasing results too quickly. Misjudging one's own limits, that path leads only to ruin, he tells them both. The young man beside him listens without a word, but the butler isn't finished. Anyone who accepts that truth and keeps pushing to grow, he adds, will eventually earn real strength. Alicia walks on ahead, her expression hidden beneath falling strands of hair, eyes closed. She begins the incantation. She offers a fragment of the mortal world to the restless dead of another realm, one bound by endless hunger and thirst below. Her shoes shift against the floor, small sounds marking the ritual's start. A hand reaches toward her, but nothing seems to happen. Confusion crosses her face as she mutters that nothing's occurring. Off to the side, the butler and the young man both freeze. Alarm spreading across their features, flame erupts violently from her clawed hand, tearing through the stillness. Whether this fire is the ritual's price or something else entirely remains unclear. The scene cuts away as the chapter marks itself to be continued.